Welcome back to TEDx QZAT. Welcome to TEDx QZAT 2021. We are so pleased that you could join us today. As we all continue to make our way through these difficult times that the COVID-19 pandemic is causing in our communities around the world, it's so inspiring how people everywhere have adapted to these situations in ways we once thought to be unimaginable. We know life won't always be like this, and we are all looking forward to better days. We have chosen a theme that resonates with this idea of passing this hurdle with an entirely new approach to how we deal with things. Our theme, Pause, Reset, Restart, is a pledge not to go back to the old normal or the pre-pandemic existence that we dwelled in. Together, we can seize this opportunity to stitch a new garment, one that fits all of humanity. We have before you today a speaker lineup that truly believe in this idea and are here to share their affirmation of this idea using this TEDx platform. So without further ado, let me introduce our first speaker for today. He's a true pioneer in the field of medical oncology, known for his support to poor and needy cancer patients by providing them with subsidized medicines and free counseling through Cochin Cancer Society. Our speaker is a true believer in the idea of equal healthcare as a birthright for all. It gives me great pleasure to welcome Dr. V.P. Gangadharan. Over to you, Doctor.
Hi, I am Dr. V.P. Gangadharan, medical oncologist working in VPS Lakeshore Hospital, Kochi, Kerala, India. I have been in this profession for the last 30 years. So I say something like starting from 1989, 1990. I think as I told you already, I'm an oncologist. That means I'm a cancer specialist. So my talk today will be on my topic, oncology or cancer. I think the word itself is scary to many of you. Why this scare? There's a question to be addressed. The answer is straightforward. There's an increasing incidence in cancer all over the world, our country too. Almost 15 lakhs new cases of cancer are registered every year. And if you take the small state of Kerala, every day we see about 120 plus new cases. It's on the increase. But with the same token, we'll immediately say that though the cancer is increasing, the cure rate is also going up. That means the number of people who are getting cured of the disease is also on the hike. So the question automatically asked is cure alone your aim of treatment? No. When you speak about aims of cancer treatment, it starts off like this: prevention, early detection, cure, prolongation of survival, and palliation. When you speak about prevention, the first question to be addressed is, can you prevent all cancers? Or are all cancers preventable? The answer is a double emphatic no. But 30% of the cancers are preventable. 30%, almost 1/3 are preventable. And almost 1/3 are screenable. That means you can go for early detection. Cure rate If you take on a broad spectrum or on a broad base, the number of patients coming to a hospital, 45 to 50% of the cancers or cancer patients are curable. And if you take the pediatric population, that means children, 70 to 80% are curable. For about 30% of the patients, you can have prolongation of life. That means they live with good quality of life. You take a diabetic patient or a patient with a hypertension, you are not curing them. They live with the disease and lead a normal life. Like that, one third of the cancers you can go for a prolongation of life with good quality of life. Another one third, they are neither curable nor can you prolong their life, but you can give them a good quality of life for as long as they live. That means it's purely palliative. So there are all these strong pillars in the treatment of cancer. So the first question is prevention. I already told you, one third of the cancer are preventable. And your plan of action is no tobacco, no alcohol, your dietary habits plus exercise. These are the three tools in the prevention of cancer. And out of this, the most important is tobacco. So if somebody asks, what is your first step in the prevention of cancer? I think it's against tobacco in any form. Because based on how you are going to use the tobacco products, your site of cancer varies, that's all. Alcohol is equally the problem. And if somebody is a smoker, and at the same time he is an alcoholic too, then all the cancers that are associated with the use of tobacco rise by tenfold. So the question is, what are the cancers related to the use of tobacco? Lung cancer, head and neck cancers, lateral cancers, they are all connected, directly linked. And you've got a lot of cancers where they contribute. That means not directly linked, but they add to, like cervical cancers, bladder cancers, kidney cancers, and an array like that. So if somebody asks back, what is the most important stand against or what is the most important plan in prevention of cancer? I think the first 10 steps are going to be against tobacco, against tobacco, against tobacco, like that. So I told you tobacco plus alcohol. There are certain cancers which are very closely associated with the use of alcohol also, like esophageal cancers, stomach cancers, liver cancers where alcohol plays a role. So no tobacco, no alcohol. Third is your dietary habits. I think the caption is very simple, but self-explanatory, like fast food kills fast. Why the caption is because high fat, high calorie diet, lack of exercise, obesity. You have got a list of cancers that are associated with it. Not only cancers, even others. But if you take the cancers as a whole, the breast cancer, the uterine cancers, colonic cancers, I think the link goes like that. And if you take a little bit more, high fat, high calorie diet and lack of fiber diet, you are prone to go for a colon cancers. So the diet has to be modified, or changed. That means you should be able to prevent obesity developing, add exercise to your plan of action, and prevent obesity. What are said and done? Green leafy vegetables and fruits, they got a protective effect in cancer. That means it has to be included in your diet. So the best healthy plate for you to take food, I'll put it across, is 50% of the plate should be filled with green leafy vegetables and fruits. 25% is grain of your choice. and 25% is protein of your choice. That's your best plate you can ever imagine. So I think preventing obesity by diet plus exercise forms your next step. 30% of the cancers are screenable. That means early detection is possible because the basic dictum is early detection and proper treatment. That's the tool for cure. So you should be able to detect them early. Breast cancers, head and neck cancers, cervical cancers, colon cancers, and prostate cancer. They are all screenable. That means there's a definite plan of action to detect them at an early phase. You've got two vaccines that you can think of at this point of time. They are not direct anti-cancer vaccines, but they have an effect on the causative effect. And the two viruses implicated are, one is hepatitis B virus, the causative factor for a liver cancer, and human papilloma virus, the causative factor for a cervical cancer. And HPV virus, the ideal age group is girls between 10 to 26 years, can go up to 40 years, but ideal age group is 10 to 26 years. And 3 doses has to be taken, this month, second month, and 6th month. But be very clear that it's not anti-cancer vaccines, but they are directed against the virus implicated against that cancer. So we have covered 2 steps: prevention, early detection. The next step is treatment or cure. How far we have reached and what are the changes which has been happening for the last 30 years? The 4 major arms of treatment are surgery, radiation, chemotherapy, and immunotherapy. And the 3 players in this game are surgical oncologists, radiation oncologists, and medical and pediatric oncologists. All areas we have changed a lot. And the basic concept has changed, like it's a comprehensive cancer treatment approach. That means surgeon, radiation oncologist, medical oncologist, they all sit together and plan treatment, not a single person. If you take the advancements in the field of surgery, I think crude mutilating surgeries have given way to conservative surgeries without finally touching upon the outcome. That means, if possible, you should be able to preserve the organ rather than fully removing the organ. For example, breast cancer. If there's any chance, you will try to preserve the breast. And laparoscopic surgeries and plastic reconstruction techniques, they all have contributed on their own. When it comes to radiation oncology, the precision has become the art of the day. That means you are not at all interested in killing cancer cells. It's the other way. You are not at all interested in killing normal cells. You are interested in killing all the cancer cells. So you try to focus on the cancer cells and kill them, that area alone, preventing the normal cells getting killed. So newer machines like linear accelerators and lot of techniques like IMRT, IGRT, they all have contributed for this. If somebody asks me which field of oncology has gone for the maximum advancements, I think the answer is straightforward. It's medical oncology. You have got newer drugs with much less side effects, because you will be scared about the side effect called as a hair loss. You have got drugs without hair loss. You have got drugs called as targeted chemotherapy. That means you are interested in only killing the cancer cells, not the normal cells. So you can target the cancer cells. I think these advances happened. And if you ask me, what about immunotherapy? We have learned that we can equip our own cells. That means our own immune system to fight against the cancer cells, the T cells. So the sleeping T cells, they can get up and they can wake up and they can finish the cancer cells. So like that we have improved in every field to say that cancer is a curable disease. Much more research has again happened in the field of oncology. Like, for every cancer, there is a driver mutation. That means one genetic mutation is the driver or responsible for that cancer. And if you can identify that mutation and you can target it, best treatment option is going to be there. And which has taught us a lesson that if you take two breast cancers, they are not similar because the driver mutations are different. Whereas a breast cancer and a lung cancer may be similar because the driver mutation is same. That means rather than the disease is going like this, you can say that by identifying driver mutations, you are able to treat. And so these are the advancements. So the question is, are we also doing the same thing? Yes, we are doing it. But we need a advancement in basic research. That should be part of our, next plan, because our country has to come up with our own protocols, our own basic research methodology, our own basic research to say that this is our data and we are going on to rely on this. COVID has taught us this lesson because COVID has shown that our cell system is very good and we can be equipped or can be better or on par with any of the best systems in the world. USA has collapsed. We have got shady eyes on WHO now, but we sustained. We fought. We are still fighting. That should be our motto. That should be our plan. So why we want to go for a change is, we should be able to see what we have learned from this. Like, there should be a stop and a pause and a restart. And I think that is something which is going to be there. I think the sequence can be different, but a restart is one which has to be part of it. And that restart, we should be thinking that we should improve probably on our telemedicine systems. We should be relying some of our artificial intelligence. And the basic primary health system has to go forward still. And if that's to happen, I'm sure that we'll be a winner. So just like we are going to conquer COVID, I think that day is not far off. From this day, I'm going to count and say that maybe, say 3 years, 4 years or 5 years from now, we'll be conquering this disease, cancer. With just like any other disease, preventable, screenable and curable. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for the truly informative idea regarding the state of oncology in this increasingly modernizing world. Our next speaker is a finance enthusiast who is actively building a community of entrepreneurs, marketers and startup enthusiasts through his YouTube channel consisting of more than 6 lakh subscribers. Through his startup Fundfolio, with over 5 lakh community members, he is constantly trying to enable people to achieve financial freedom, help them get a better understanding of capital markets. Please welcome the one and only Mr. Shariq Shamsuddin.
We live in a funny world. So human species has developed so much, yet we fail to enjoy the true essence of life. Many a times we fail to enjoy life, we fail to enjoy happiness in life and even peace in life. Why do you think that happens? Let me ask you a question. What do you do in life as of now? I believe a lot of us are trapped in the rat race of life. What are you doing? You're born, then you go to school, you start studying, you study harder, you get a job. Before that, you get into college. You prepare for entrance examinations, you get into college, you study even harder there. Finally, you get a good placement, you get into a job, you work harder, you get into a better job, and then you live life like that. And this go on and on and on. And that's exactly what happens, right? You study, you work, and you slog, and this repeats and repeats. And even it happens to such an extent that you go on to your next generation and ask them to do the same. And why do you think you do all of this? Study, work, slog, repeat. Why do you do this? You might have different explanations for this. This is very funny, you know. I've seen a lot of people coming to me and saying that they actually go to school and college because they want to learn something. Great, absolutely appreciate that. Education should be holistic, it should be actually uplifting human beings, amazingly great. And then there's always this doctor who comes up to me and says that he actually went to medical school and became a doctor because he wanted to become a doctor. Amazing, absolute respect for him. He wants to become a doctor because he wants to serve the society and he wants to get respect for that. Absolutely appreciate that. But let me say, my dear friends, I might sound materialistic here, but I say you do all of this because you have to pay your bills. Right? At the end of the month, when all of the bills come in, you have to meet the basic expenses of your life. You have to pay your bills. And I believe, unfortunately, that is the hard fact that we have to believe. That is what our socio-economic structure has come into. We are doing all this so that we can pay our basic expenses, and that is what I call paying your bills. And then there's this fine gentleman, this doctor. He'll again come up to me and say, hey, it's not the case with me. I really want to become a doctor because I want to serve the society. And then I ask him back, okay, amazing again. You serve the society, you treat them, you consider it as charity, you get respect in return, and do not take money for that. What do you think that fine gentleman will say? He'll absolutely need money to live his life right. I'm not talking about luxury here. I'm not talking about living an extravagant lifestyle. I'm talking about money so that he can take care of his basic expenses. So as we call in India, roti, kapada and makan, right? Our basic expenses, our food, our clothes, our shelter, all the basic expenses should be met for an individual in today's world to live a happy life. And I believe it is only when your basic expenses are met, it is only then you can live a truly liberated, happy life, right? That is where I think everybody should achieve financial freedom. And I believe everybody can achieve financial freedom. So what is financial freedom? So this doctor again, so if I am telling him, in his case, he is having money enough in his hand so that all of his basic necessities, basic expenses are met throughout his life. He need not worry about money anymore. Every month he is getting money. From the money he has already invested, he is getting money to live his life. He need not think about money anymore. That is the state of financial freedom. And if he reaches that state, if he doesn't have to worry about money, all his expenses are taken care about, then don't you think that that person can actually do what he loves to do, which was, as he rightly said, he wants to serve the society, he wants to treat them, he wants to do it as charity and only take respect in return and not money in return. And this is the case with every one of you sitting here and listening to the video. You would be passionate about a lot of things in life. But it is only when you are financially stable, financially secure, and financially free, you will be truly liberated to go for that. Right? Your expenses are met, you have time and you have life in front of you. You can go after anything that you're passionate about, anything that inspires you and motivates you. And I believe that is what human beings should do. They shouldn't be in the rat race and chasing behind somebody's dreams and making money so that at the end of the month they can pay their expenses, pay their bills. That is not what life should be. Life should be about chasing happiness and being happy and being in that state of mind. And that is what I want for all of you to achieve financial freedom. And I'm saying everybody can achieve financial freedom, and it is easy. And that is a common notion which goes around in the society, thinking that only people who are rich, who are in the elite class, can achieve financial freedom. Absolutely wrong. What I am saying is, I have done it, and each and every one of you, irrespective of where you come from, irrespective of what you're doing, irrespective of how much money you're making, you can also achieve financial freedom. And today, we are going to see how that is going to happen. So my name is Shariq Shamsuddin. I'm 26 years of age, and I'm a YouTuber. I speak about personal finance, personal financial management, right? And I spread awareness about it. I'm also an entrepreneur. I run a company called Fundfolio. We build products and services with heart so that we can help you become financially free. So the major part here is I am keeping my final steps towards my financial freedom, and I want to teach you today how everybody can do it, and that's what we are going to see. If you're still not convinced, I want to tell you one more thing, which is financial freedom is godly. So there's this common notion which says that what is God? Who is God? God is everywhere, right? I mean, it's literally said that God is everywhere around you, yet you cannot see God. So I think In our system, in our conventional system, right from our childhood, we have been hearing a lot of advices like this. Yet, in all of these advices, the underlying principle is, beta, son, go for financial freedom. But the people who are giving the advices, they do not know it. We who heard the advice, we also never figured that out. That is what I'm going to tell you. So our elders, our parents, those nagging aunties, uncles, all of them kept saying this to you, right? Son, become an engineer. Get a government job, study well and get placed from college. Get the best placement available. I'll marry my child to a doctor only. This is in trend nowadays, right? Do not work in a startup, right? And do not start your own business. These are the things that we keep hearing from our elders. And what do you think is hidden there? Why do you think they say that? They only need one thing for you, which is for you to eliminate financial risk from your life and you to become financially secure. And that is what they say to you. They mean only financial security. But there's a major difference there. When they say you need to get financial security, they actually mean that you should work throughout your life. In that stable, boring job of yours, you should work throughout your life and you keep working and you make money from that. And that is how you become financially stable. But I'm telling you something different. I want you to make your money work for you. You shouldn't exchange your time for money. It shouldn't be you who work for money. Your money should work for you. And that is exactly what I'm going to say you. Again, I'm saying everybody can achieve financial freedom and it is easy. Now you might ask me, I'm preaching this a lot. I'm talking about this a lot. Can I show you how you can actually do it? You want to see that? I'll actually give you a demonstration of a fine gentleman of 25 years of age who has completed his BTech probably, and as it goes in the society, he has went ahead and done his MBA also. Now he has a fine job at the age of 25 and he is making nearly 60,000 rupees per month. And I'll show you how this fine young gentleman making 60,000 per month at the age of 25 can become completely financially independent and free by the age of 35. That is within 10 years. That's exactly what I'm going to show you. So at the age of 25, which is year one, he is getting an income of rupees 60,000 per month and he's having expenses of 30,000. Now, he is a person who I have advised and I've asked him to become financially frugal. I've asked him to manage his finances in a great way, his budget in a great way. He has his insurance sorted, he has his tax planning sorted, everything is sorted within this 30,000 rupees. That is what I've asked him to do, right? So he has income of 60,000 rupees, expense of another 30,000 rupees. Basically, he's saving 30,000 rupees per month. Sounds cool? This is possible? Absolutely possible in today's time and age is what I believe. So this is what is case in 25, when he is 25. Now 10 years fast forward, at the age of 35, right? At the age of 35, his income will increase to 98,000. How do you think that happened? It's easy, right? Normally what we see is from the age of 25 to 35, people normally shift jobs. They go for better jobs. They upskill themselves. Normally, they even get 30% hike in their jobs. Not even looking at that. I'm taking a very conservative calculation of him getting 5% salary hike every year. That is possible? Absolutely possible. 5% salary hike every year, so 60,000 at the age of 25. At age of 35, he's making 98,000 rupees per month. And his expenses, they have grown from 30,000 rupees to 49,000 rupees. Why? Inflation. Right, inflation. So as you know, the price of commodities around us go up with time, and in India, the rate that we see is 5% per year. Right? So expenses go up 5% per year. So they have gone up, so expenses have increased from 30,000 to 49,000 per month. What I am saying is, if he live a life judiciously from the age of 25 to 35, he can reach a state of financial freedom at the age of 35, and I'll show you how he can do that. So what he has to do is, he has to invest into an asset class which gives him 15% return every year. As easy as that, right? He has to start a systematic investment plan. That is what an SIP is. Do not worry about the jargons here, it's easy. Right? He has that 30,000 rupees with him. He just has to invest that 30,000 rupees into an asset class which gives him 15% returns per year, and every year he's increasing that amount by 5% because his income is increasing by 5%. He can increase the invested amount also by 5%, right? So he's doing this. And what is an asset class which will give you 15% per year? My dear friends, the stock market. The amazing, beautiful opportunity of stock market in India. So I know you might be afraid, frightened. You might have heard a lot of bad things about the stock market. Do not worry. You look into statistics, you look into data, you look into numbers. Do not even worry if you do not understand the stock markets. What I'm saying is, if you look into historical data, Nifty or Sensex, which represents the stock market in our country, they have grown with the annual growth rate of nearly 15%. And we have seen amazing, huge crashes in the market. The crash of 2000, 2008, 2018, the recent COVID crash. Irrespective of all these, the market has consistently given a return of nearly 15% per year. So what I want you to, or this person to do, is invest into a mutual fund either, right? If he doesn't understand the market, do not worry. Give it into a actual fund manager who is experienced in the market. He'll invest the money on his behalf and generating returns, and the returns is received by this guy. Or else he can invest directly into Nifty or Sensex if he doesn't know the stock market. What does investing into Nifty means? He's basically investing into Nifty ETFs. Exchange traded funds, again, do not worry about the technicalities. It means that you are investing into the top 50 companies in India. If you believe in India, that Indian economy will improve with time, what is wrong in investing into the top 50 companies in India? With time, when India improves, the top 50 companies will also grow and you are getting returns. And again, historically, as I said, Nifty has given 15% return. And I'm calculating the same. Going ahead, he's making 15% returns. And in 10 years, thank you, compounding, the eighth wonder in the world, his money has compounded to nearly 97.5 lakh rupees. Now, the only thing I want to ask is, what can he do with 97.5 lakh rupees so that he is completely financially free? And that is what I'm going to show you. So he has 97.5 lakh rupees now. So I know this is too much information for you, but let's go row by row. He takes this 97.5 lakh rupees when his age is 35. When his age is 35, his expense per month is 49,000 rupees. All the calculations are right. If you want to calculate, you can do that, right? So 49,000 rupees expense per month, and from the 97.5 lakh rupees total amount he has generated over the last 10 years, he takes 58 lakhs and puts it into a bank account or any liquid asset which gives him 6% returns per year. Okay, you're with me on this? 58 lakhs into the bank account, and he puts the remaining 97.5 lakhs minus 58 lakhs, which is 39.5 lakhs, into Nifty or a mutual fund, which again is giving him 15% returns per year. Okay, so what happens over the next 10 years? From 35 to 45, his age is 45 now. Fast forward 10 years, his expense per month to live, basic expense to live, has increased to 80,000 rupees. And what he has done is, over the 10 years, he kept withdrawing money from his bank account. Right? According to his expense every month, he kept withdrawing money, and now the bank account is zero. But what we can see is Nifty has grown from 39.5 lakhs to 1.6 crore rupees. So again, at the age of 45, he has expense of 80,000 rupees per month. From that 1.6 crore rupees, he has taken 95 lakhs and put it into his bank account, and remaining 65 lakhs continues to be in Nifty. Fast forward 10 years, at the age of 55, when his expense per month is 1.3 lakhs, bank account again is zero. Because he kept withdrawing money from that, and now Nifty has appreciated to 2.63 crores. At the age of 55, when he is having 1.3 lakh rupees expense per month, he takes 1.53 crores from the 2.63 crores and puts in his bank account, and in Nifty, 1.1 crore rupees continues. And what happens is, fast forward 10 years again, at the age of 65, his expense per month is rupees 2.1 lakhs, bank account is zero again, Nifty has grown to 4.4 crore rupees. And this cycle continues. Every 10 years, he replenishes his bank account, and the rest of the money appreciates in Nifty. And at the age of 85, his expense is at 5.6 lakh rupees per month, and his bank account is zero. Nifty is 14.6 crore rupees. And if he has more life in front of him, he can still continue doing the same thing. How beautiful is this? So you might say this is ideal. Right? There are a lot of assumptions here. His life improves, he marries, he has kids, he has to plan for them. A lot of things come into place. A lot of variables are there. I do not say this is an ideal scene. I'm not saying that you should follow exact same thing. What I am saying is, what I want to demonstrate is, it is easy. It is doable. Right? A person with 60,000 rupees income, he could do it in 10 years, as I showed you, without taking into a lot of variables. I know that. If that is the case, don't you think that if you actually plan better, if you have a financial advisor in place, if you define your targets and goals and all of those things you want to achieve and work towards it in a better manner, this was very easy. Investing into just one asset without looking into any risk factors, you look into your risk aversity. If you do not want to invest in the stock market, invest into gold, invest into real estate. The point here is the simplicity of this. We common people, we get afraid looking at this. We think that only the rich could do it, but my point again, the demonstration was to prove that everybody could do it. Trust me, everybody can do it. Now the question is, how can everybody achieve it? Right. So the first and foremost thing, unfortunately, because of our education system, no one teaches us about financial management. Personal financial management is never taught in schools, not even in colleges. And the so-called people who gave us advices, our teachers, our parents, our uncles and aunties, they never taught us how to manage money. They always asked us to go to school, go to college, do all of those things, and to earn money. They never taught us how to manage money. So now that is on us. Unfortunately, that is on us. So we have to take some time out, invest time, invest money into education, learn about this. What are the different asset classes available? What are the investment options available? Understand insurance, understand tax, do all of those things. And once you are knowledgeable about this, then start your journey towards financial freedom is what I would say. The first thing that you can do is your personal finance management. What is that? That is basically you managing your money. My whole point is you need not make more money to become financially free. You just have to manage your money better. So you manage your money better by budgeting, knowing what a need is, what a want is, differentiating between needs and wants, having a fixed budget and then following that frugally. You have to do that. Then comes debt management. Once a person gets a job nowadays, the first visit he does is not to his parents. He goes to a bank, applies for a vehicle loan and gets his first four-wheeler. Then he goes for another loan, then he goes for a home loan, he goes for a wedding loan, a honeymoon loan even nowadays, right? So debt management is very important. If you are in a debt trap, get out of it very soon. Insurance is indemnification for your finances. People do overlook it. So you really need to think well about insurance, tax planning. You save a lot of money by planning your taxes properly and using that money again to invest. Now you manage your money using your personal finance management. And once that is done, with the extra money you have, invest that money because you have to. Not want to, you need to beat inflation. So you invest your money. And I still believe we have a beautiful opportunity in India via the stock market, the opportunity of investing in the stock market. Yes, as I said earlier, if you are averse or if you want more safety, you can go for probably real estate or gold. But I think stock market is actually possible. It can easily give you somewhere from 12 to 15% returns over the long term. You need not worry about that. If you cannot do it directly, you can consult someone who actually knows it, like mutual fund house or someone else, and get it sorted for you. So invest your money so that it grows over time. And the last and the major part here is follow all this with a lot of patience and discipline. Because for some reason, the financial domain is so messed up in the country, right? So people actually they think about becoming rich overnight, and that never happens. So they have to hold on to this with a lot of discipline and patience, and only this will happen after that. So this is what I wanted to convey today, that anybody can achieve financial freedom, and it is no rocket science, and everybody can do it by following only these 3 steps. By actually planning your life actively, understanding what your life is, what your goals are, and then planning your personal finance. If you do that, everybody, trust me, can achieve financial freedom. And I'm here, and I have made it my life's mission to help each and everyone to achieve financial freedom. So as I said in the beginning, we live in a funny world. Some people love money, some people hate money, some people crave money, some people work for money, some people, even kill for money. But what they miss is, they just need to manage money well, and that'll give them financial freedom. So I wish you all the very best, and hoping to see you all become financially independent. Thank you very much.
Thank you for sharing your wonderful insights. Our next speaker is the Managing Director of Cochin International Airport. The aviation industry was one of the biggest victims of COVID-19 pandemic in terms of financial and operational impacts. Here, to enlighten us on how the industry deals with these alarming situations in such challenging times is A.C.K. Nair. Over to you, sir.
We'll start this TEDx of CUSAT, and I'm A.C.K. Nair, Airport Director of Cochin International Airport. I'm welcoming all of my listeners to Cochin International Airport, the first solar-powered airport in the world. I think you all, everybody knows that Cochin International Airport is evolved and started as the first public-private participation airport in Cochin, and it has been grown and it has been reached to the height, and so many acclamations has been received by our airport. The last is the greatest UN's award of the Champion of Earth award. See, the theme of the today's topic or the discussion is that pause, reset and restart. We all know that aviation is the most affected area because of this pandemic situations, and the whole world has become a single city because of this aviation aviation boom or aviation growth. And even when this pandemic situation is affected and the total air travel has been come to a stop, the whole the world has become a standstill. And accordingly, I think we know that in India, the first step of the stoppage of the whole system, that the pause of the system, affected on March 23rd onwards, on March 23rd of 2020. March 23rd, 2020, the international air travel to India has been totally stopped. And then our domestic operations to within India also stopped by May 25th. And that continued up to May 25th onwards. But even though the stoppage of the whole system and the lockdown has been affected in India, but we, the airport operators, are not able to close our airport, because there are the flights, the emergency flights which is coming from various parts of the world has to be received by us, and we already provided separate protocol system for accepting the passengers. And there was a pertinent question asked by the Keralites, especially the Keralite people, to us: why you are bringing people or Malayalis from other part? It is or other part or where this COVID has been infected, bringing to Kerala, and then it is becoming again spreading the COVID situation in Kerala also. But our answer is very clear: the Malayalis gone to other countries to make their livelihood, and also it was the major impetus of the Kerala economy. But when a pandemic situation has come, we should not forget them, or we should not leave them alone wherever the medical system or other attentions were very meager. So we have to bring them, our brothers and sisters, to our own the state or our own country. We have to give maximum care for them. So that was why our airport is all been fully operational during the lockdown period also. The fully operational means whichever the flight coming, we are receiving or accepting our passengers during the lockdown period also. So, but there was a big challenge for us. How we will protect our staff from the spreading of pandemic situations. We have to give the personal protection for them, and we have to make the social distancing of the passengers and the staff while receiving to the terminal. And then we have to also to give the protection on the hygienic situations. So the baggages has to be sanitized, and their the physical sanitization by bags and all. Personal protection kits like PPE has to be provided for the staff to avoid the contamination, or when they are the touching, or when they are closely associating with the passengers. So that has been protected. And then after that situation of the stoppage or the pause system, we will be coming to the restart or reset or making our airport then operation for the next set of flights coming. So when after May 25th, domestic passengers were being accepted in all airports in India. So domestic flights are started operating, and the initially government has permitted only 33% of normal schedule. That means pre-COVID schedule in the initial time. That slowly increased, and now by the December 2020, government has been already accepting the schedules of almost 70% of the pre-COVID situation. So what are the preparation we would do for resetting our system? The resetting of the system means the airport has to be totally equipped for the new normal. That means new the COVID situation or accepting with the COVID situations. We have made a social distancing marking in the entire terminal where passenger processing is happening. So they have to have a clear distancing apart, without touching or without physical contact to each other. And another thing is, there is an important aspect is that the document verification. When the passenger is coming to the terminal, their documents has to be verified for allowing the entry to the correct passenger. So that was a big challenge, and we have devised a new system of document verification which has been developed by our own IT engineers in our system, where the boarding pass is being scanned. Your passenger details and your verifications are available, so the passenger have been easy access to that. And then you have to have a temperature scanning arrangement where the passenger, when is coming for boarding, their temperature will be scanned. If the temperature is not beyond the limit only, they will be permitted into the terminal. So when the passengers are coming, when the contactless, their document verifications are over, then they are entering to the terminal, their baggages are to be sanitized. So there is a separate system has been introduced with the help of the HMD and the NBOL. Baggage sanitization system has been introduced, or the baggage will be scanned through that, so the baggage will be totally sanitized. And then when they are going everywhere, the social distancing marking and hand sanitization systems are being implemented. While going to the frisking area also, without physical contact, the passengers have been frisked before boarding, and there also the contactless boarding pass verification system has been introduced. So that is why we, after introducing all these measures, on May 25th, our domestic terminal is opened and the domestic flight has been start coming. Though international scheduled flights are not operated, but there are flights coming on Vande Bharat mission, as well as the air bubble arrangement or air bridge arrangement between one country to another country. What is the bilateral arrangement? They are permitting some of the flights to come for the essential passengers, those who are coming or those who are held up here to take to their country. So that flights are still operating, and international terminal also the same protocol procedures has been introduced. And in addition to that, whenever the passenger is coming, there are COVID testing facilities also introduced in the terminal, where the antigen test as well as RT-PCR test can be done for the passengers arriving in both international terminal and in the domestic terminal, as well as the public for testing. There is a facility in the outside the terminal also for this. So these facilities also have been arranged. Then how we are going to restart the system? Restarting the system, I already told you, we already restarted the domestic terminal operations, and international terminal operation, the full restart, we are hopefully by 2021, the operations will be started. But now, passengers as well as staff has been almost accepting the new normal. That means the post-COVID normal system. See, so there are a lot of restrictions to travel. Now, on 23rd of this month, the new system has been introducing that all passengers coming from Europe, UK and our South African countries as well as Middle East has to test their RT-PCR test in the terminal. Before boarding, they have to have their RT-PCR negative certificate, and they have to upload this negative certificate in the Air Suvidha portal. And while reaching in the terminal also, they have to undergo the COVID RT-PCR test. And after taking sample, they are being allowed to go to their own home. But if it is positive, they have to undergo their treatment as per the state protocol. If it is negative, they will undergo the normal quarantine procedure as prescribed by the government or health departments. So that system will be introducing, and we are expecting that more and more skies of India is open for the other foreign airlines, and more passengers used to come. I think with the COVID situations, the major hit is happened to the travel and tourism industry across the world. In India itself, almost the expected loss in the aviation industry itself is nearly 40,000 crores, where 30,000 crores is mainly for airlines and 10 to 11 crores is happening for the airport operators. So almost the travel, now the traffic, what is happening is only hardly less than 50%. In Cochin International Airport also, we have faced a huge loss during this situation, and but however, we are not being stopped any passenger the employee benefits, but we are continuing with that, but tide over the situation onto that. Now even we have been hit badly. Aviation, we are expecting that the pre-COVID situation of the aviation industry in India will happen by 2020 or 22 or 2023. So till that time, the aviation industry will not be that much encouraging into that, but we hope that the future of Indian aviation industry is very bright. And now I am very clearly say that, considering the different mode of travel across India or even abroad, the air travel is the safest mode of transport in we can say for the passengers as concerned, because maximum protections, maximum safeguarding has been taken for protecting passengers as well as their baggages and all. So I can assure everybody that the safe mode of travel is the air travel itself. And in Cochin International Airport also, we have been make a major development of our airport, considering the pre-COVID growth of aviation, but the expansions and developments what we have done, we are keeping anyway. It will be keeping for the further pace of our developments and our growth. And whenever we are thinking about this Cochin International Airport, we have to think of one fact. The airport is the first public-private participation model airport in India, which has been conceived and constructed and developed by a dynamic officer, Mr. Vijay Kurian. He is the founder of this airport concept in India, and it has been paved way for the airport infrastructure development in the public-private participation at different part of India. So we are proudly saying that Cochin International Airport is the first airport and paved way for the whole aviation growth in India. So I'm concluding here with that. The theme taken by the TEDx by the CUSAT team is very apt to this situation, the time, and I hope all the very best for this event.
Thank you for taking us through your journey. This will undoubtedly be an inspiration to so many. Our next speaker is a person of many talents, a lawyer by profession, but at the same time acts, sings and dances. Having debuted into the South Indian film industry at a very young age, she is someone who truly respects the culture and traditions that she was raised in and is a symbol of its representation globally. This Kochi-born celebrity is a living embodiment of our theme, rewriting every rule along the way about being a woman in the 21st century. Please welcome Ms. Apurva Bose.
If I saw another day, only to scream into the night. Nothing ever tries to change, even if I want to realize. 'Cause I've been sitting here, same old ways, taking off without the same mistake. Darling, will you go away? Won't be a simple voice.
The one question that I keep getting asked is, what is it that I actually do for a living? Most of you have seen me in Malayalam cinema, so for you, I'm Apurva Bose, the actor. Few know me as a lawyer, fewer still as a human rights lawyer. And if you happen to glance through my Instagram profile, you might even think I'm a dancer or a singer. So there's this perpetual confusion surrounding what is it that I actually do. Even so, I have found myself struggling to answer this seemingly straightforward question. But there's one person who has questioned this aspect of my life way more than others. And that's me, myself. That's probably because I've never really been able to associate myself to just one single activity. It's always been a juggling act between all the different things that I'm extremely passionate about. So in that respect, I think I've always been a jack of many trades, but never a master of one. But to accept myself as a master of none has not been an overnight process. It has taken time. This journey has numerous highs and lows, and it continues to be a work in progress. So today, I'd like to share snippets of this journey of mine in the hopes that it resonates with at least some of you. So let's turn the clock back a notch. I grew up in a typical Indian household where my mother sent me for music and dance lessons even before I could walk or talk properly. My mother was a relentless taskmaster. So she actually sat for music lessons with me for a year until I hummed my very first note. My grandmother, or Ammuma as I fondly call her, still tells me stories of my endless sulking and crying before every lesson. Honestly, I just hated waking up at 4 in the morning for my dance lessons before school and then music lessons after. All I wanted to do was to just sit at home and play with my cousins and toys. I don't know how and when all of this changed, but then soon enough, these things became the best part of my day and eventually an integral part of my life. Unlike music and dance, I loved being in front of the camera as a child. My father loved clicking photos of me, and I loved posing for him. So when a family friend asked my mother if she'd be okay with me doing a print advertisement, Amma readily agreed, probably a bit relieved knowing that this was something I'd do without throwing a tantrum. And that's how my modeling career began. At the age of 3, happily eating ghee for a print advertisement. As I grew up, I also developed a love for theatre and acting. There was something amazing about just being on stage and transforming into a new character and instinctively feeling the pulse of the audience. So all these different things, the theatre productions, the activities, the stage shows, representing my school for them, all these things, they defined my childhood. And looking back, I don't think I can really imagine a childhood without all these different things that I've become extremely passionate about. Now, moving on a bit from here, remember how as children we were often asked this question, what would we like to be when we grow up? I was asked this in 3rd grade and was asked to make a speech about it. So I confidently went up on stage and said that I'd like to become a scientist. Well, this would have been an impossible task considering how amazing I'm at maths. And then when I was 13 or 14, this ambition changed to that of a neurosurgeon. Well, again, I suspect this has something to do with me watching Hugh Laurie on House MD. The point is, until a certain age, this question never really scared any of us. Until high school. Suddenly, we were sent for all these career counseling sessions and teachers were stressing on the importance of the upcoming exams in our career. And they were also telling us that these extracurriculars needed to take a back seat. Well, this was a bit confusing for me because I was always that student who did quite well in her academics, but at the same time, I also loved doing the other things that I was passionate about. Multitasking actually helped me focus better in my studies. I learned to manage my time more efficiently as well. So why were these things suddenly termed as distractions? So I did what came most naturally to me. When I got offers to do movies, bang in the middle of my examinations, I decided to go for it. Well, this wouldn't have been possible without the support of my family. But I honestly had a blast alternating time between my studies and the film set. So basically, all these different things, they were constants in my journey. But at the same time, there were these external pressures constantly emphasizing on the importance of a mainstream career. Thankfully, by this time, I was quite certain I wanted to pursue a career in law, but I was also quite certain I wanted to continue doing all the other things I was passionate about. And that's exactly what I did in those 5 years. I interned at several places. I also managed to do around 3 films. I worked in the Parliament, the United Nations, and also I managed to sing in a movie. I also secured a Doordarshan accreditation in Bharatnatyam. But every single time in an interview, when I was asked this question, what I see myself as, I drew a blank. I was just as confused as ever. I don't think I realized at that point that this seemingly straightforward question was in a way to sort of constrict yourself in a certain role or bracket. It made you think that in order to be successful, you had to become a master at one thing. There is this natural progression that we're all sort of socially conditioned to follow. First you do your school, then undergraduation, then you do your masters, and then you pick that one thing that you're most passionate about. But what happens if you have many things that you're passionate about? The next phase of my life was probably the most important decision that I have ever taken. The decision to pursue my master's at the Graduate Institute in Geneva. Well, this meant giving up the comforts of familiarity that are associated to Ammuma's Paramburi and hanging out with my cousins in Fort Kochi, and moving to a strange new place with new people, new food and new cultures. But most importantly, this meant giving up all the other things that I was passionate about, at least momentarily. So in one sweep, I moved from Cochin to one of the most cosmopolitan cities in the world. But Geneva became home way faster than I'd ever imagined. Well, I was exposed to different ideas and perspectives from people all across the world and received an excellent education from some of the most brilliant legal minds in the world at the Graduate Institute. I also developed a liking for human rights and gender issues, which continues to be my area of specialization in international law. But I think a large part of Geneva becoming home had to do with how I continued doing all the other things that I was extremely passionate about. I started choreographing dances for festivals, met a friend and started jamming and creating music with him, traveled to different parts of the world, and I also did multiple photo shoots. The last lap of my master's came under extraordinary circumstances when the whole world was under lockdown. For the first time in my life, I was not doing multiple things and there was no academic pressure. So in this vacuum, I convinced myself that my future was uncertain. Well, I started getting these momentary bouts of anxiety and I brushed this aside as something which was quite normal. Until the second half of 2020. I started waking up with a knot in my stomach and a lump in my throat. And this was usually accompanied by a feeling of despair. On some days, I'd wake up convinced that I had COVID and would check my temperature every few minutes. And on some other days, I'd wake up feeling extremely sensitive to sunlight and would stay under my blanket the whole day. To make matters worse, I also started compulsively Googling. What exactly was wrong with me? Was this all in my head? Or was I actually sick? To put the cherry on the cake, I woke up one day with an intense ringing noise in my left ear and a hissing noise in my right ear. I waited, Googled some remedies, but there was no respite. And then began my consultations with a slew of doctors in Geneva, and I was finally diagnosed with tinnitus. For those of you who don't know, tinnitus is a condition where you can hear noises such as ringing and hissing in one or both ears in the absence of any external sound. Well, I honestly had never heard of this before, but it's actually quite common. So what did I do? I started Googling more, and this honestly was just feeding my own paranoia. So my condition is rarely an indication of an underlying illness, but at the same time, it can severely deplete your standard of living. Imagine hearing this or this every second of your life. Honestly, the only thing I hoped for in that moment was that one moment of silence. Everything else seemed insignificant in comparison. Out of sheer desperation, I did something which I probably had never thought of before. I reached out to a friend's therapist. My therapist, who had incidentally also been suffering from tinnitus, was an absolute godsend. Though initially I sought therapy to understand how to deal with tinnitus, I soon started introspecting the underlying causes for my anxiety and stress, as extreme anxiety and stress are also related to tinnitus. The breakthrough moment in my therapy came when I finally realized what was dormant in me all these years. My anxiety basically stemmed from my fear of failure. What if I'm never successful? What if I never make it? All this while, I had my academics to focus on, and now that I was no longer a student, I felt confused and stranded. But there was another layer that was actually triggering this fear. And this brings me to the beginning of my talk. The fear of being master of none. Yes, I was Apoorva Bose, the actor, the dancer, the lawyer, and the singer. But what if I just remained Apoorva Bose, the actor, the lawyer, the dancer, and the singer, who was just merely average? Years of social conditioning had led me to believe that in order to become successful, I had to choose that one career path. So my knee-jerk reaction to this realization was to frantically start looking for new jobs, though I already had one. I started applying for PhD positions that I was barely even interested in. But most importantly, I stopped dancing and singing. Well, to become a successful human rights lawyer, I should focus on my career, right? In this period of time, I started despising Geneva, a place that I'd called home. All I wanted to do was to just go back to Cochin, be with my family and friends, my personal happy space. So when travel restrictions eased, I decided to go back to Cochin. A naive part of me actually believed that my tinnitus would just magically vanish the moment I reached Cochin. Well, that was just wishful thinking, as my tinnitus was just as stubborn as ever. But there was a silver lining. I started doing all the things that I was extremely passionate about. I started dancing again. I also started singing again, did a bunch of photo shoots, and even read multiple scripts. And that's when this realization hit me. My safe space had never been a physical place. It's been all these different things that I'm extremely passionate about. This is where I went when I was sad or happy or even confused. So if you're somebody who is a master at something, then you're there or a sheer determination and talent? And if that one thing defines you, well then hats off to you. But if you're somebody like me and still hasn't figured out what defines you in this perpetual rat race, well, take a step back. Broaden your horizons. Who says you have to be defined by just one thing? Who says that to become successful, you have to be the best at something? If you think you're just average or just decent at many different things, then let me assure you, you're perfectly normal and just as awesome. Let them all define you. So today, my tinnitus is just as stubborn as ever, but I've learned to embrace it as that companion, that warning system of mine that tells me when my body is under stress. That friend that we all need that tells us to take a break and just chill. Well, tinnitus is that friend for me. Just that mine is more annoying than most. Yes, I have days when I wake up with a knot in my stomach and a lump in my throat, but those days are short-lived, as I just take a break and maybe jam with a friend. Yes, I'm still healing, and there are momentary lapses in this journey. But I've learned to accept myself for who I am. This is who I am. I'm Apurva Bose, the actor, the dancer, the singer, and the lawyer, and so much more. I'm tiny bits of an actor, lawyer, dancer, and a singer, and who knows, maybe tomorrow I'll actually find something else I'm more passionate about. And maybe along the way, I'll go from being a master of none to a master of some.
Our next speaker is renowned for his intense devotion and passion towards culinary arts. Hailing from Kollam, he has had experience working as a head chef of many reputed restaurants around the world, including Gymkhana and Hoppers in London. Let's hear the story of Chef Suresh Pillai, someone who rose from humble beginnings to become an international phenomenon in his domain.
നമസ്കാരം, ഷെഫ് സുരേഷ് ആണ്. ഒരുപാട് സന്തോഷത്തോടു കൂടിയാണ് ഈ വേദിയിൽ നിങ്ങളുമായിട്ട് സംവദിക്കാൻ വരുന്നത്. കാരണം മറ്റൊന്നുമല്ല, വലിയ മേന്മകളൊന്നുമില്ല, അതല്ലെങ്കിൽ അധികം വിദ്യാഭ്യാസ യോഗ്യതയോ അല്ലെങ്കിൽ ഒരുപാട് സാമ്പത്തികമായ ജീവിത സാഹചര്യങ്ങളൊന്നുമില്ലാത്ത കൊല്ലത്തെ അഷ്ടമുടി കായലിൻ്റെ തീരത്തുള്ള ഒരു ദ്വീപിൽ ജനിച്ചു വളർന്ന ഒരു കുട്ടി 26 വർഷത്തെ കരിയറിൽ കുറേ നേട്ടങ്ങൾ നേടിയെടുക്കാൻ പറ്റി. അത് വേണമെങ്കിൽ BBC മാസ്റ്റർ ഷെഫിൽ പങ്കെടുത്ത ഒരു സംഭവമാവാം, അല്ലെങ്കിൽ ബഹമാസ് യൂണിവേഴ്സിറ്റിയിലെ കുട്ടികളെ പഠിപ്പിക്കാൻ കിട്ടിയ ഒരു അവസരമാവാം, അല്ലെങ്കിൽ വിവിധ രാജ്യങ്ങളിൽ പോകാൻ പറ്റിയതോ, അല്ലെങ്കിൽ വിശ്വവിഖ്യാതമായ കുറേ ഷെഫ്മാരുടെ കീഴിൽ ജോലിയെടുക്കാനും അല്ലെങ്കിൽ അവിടുത്തെയൊക്കെ ഭക്ഷണങ്ങളൊക്കെ കഴിക്കാനുള്ള ഭാഗ്യമൊക്കെ ആവാം. ഇതൊക്കെ നേടിയ ഈ ഒരു തിരിഞ്ഞു നോക്കുമ്പോൾ ഉണ്ടാകുന്ന ഒരു സംതൃപ്തി, അല്ലെങ്കിൽ ഒരു 10ാം ക്ലാസ് വിദ്യാഭ്യാസം മാത്രം നേടിയ ഒരു ഗ്രാമീണ ബാലന് ഇങ്ങനെയൊക്കെ എത്തുമ്പോൾ ഉണ്ടാകുന്ന ഒരു സന്തോഷം, അത് നിങ്ങളുമായിട്ട് സംവദിക്കാൻ കിട്ടിയ ഒരു അവസരം തന്നെയാണിത്. തീർച്ചയായിട്ടും ഇത് വെച്ച് ഇൻസ്പയർ ചെയ്യാൻ വേണ്ടിയിട്ട് നോക്കിക്കഴിഞ്ഞാൽ ഒരുപാട് മെസ്സേജുകളുണ്ട് എനിക്ക് പറയാനായിട്ട് തന്നെ. കാരണം ഈ ഒരു മേഖലയിലേക്ക് പ്ലാൻ ചെയ്ത് വന്ന ഒരാളൊന്നുമല്ല. കാരണം ഈ ഒരു കുക്കിംഗ് മേഖലയിൽ കുറേ നേട്ടങ്ങൾ ഒക്കെ എനിക്ക് നേടിയെടുക്കാൻ പറ്റിയിട്ടുണ്ടെങ്കിലും തീർച്ചയായിട്ടും അതിൻ്റെ ഒരു കുറേ ഒക്കെയെങ്കിലും പ്ലാനിങ് അതിന് ശേഷം ഉണ്ടാവുകയും അത് നമ്മുടെ ജീവിത വിജയങ്ങളിലോ അല്ലെങ്കിൽ നമ്മുടെ കരിയറിൻ്റെ നേട്ടത്തിലൊക്കെ എത്താൻ പറ്റും എന്നുള്ളൊരു തെളിവ് കൂടിയാണിത്. കാരണം 10ാം ക്ലാസ് കഴിഞ്ഞു, കോളേജിൽ പ്രീ ഡിഗ്രി പൂർണ്ണമാക്കാൻ പറ്റാതെ ഒരു ചെറിയൊരു തൊഴിൽ എടുക്കേണ്ട ഒരു സാഹചര്യത്തിൽ വീടിനടുത്തുള്ള ഒരു റെസ്റ്റോറൻറ്റിൽ വെയിറ്ററായിട്ട് ജോലി ചെയ്യുകയാണ് 450 രൂപ ശമ്പളത്തിൽ. ആ ഒരു സമയത്ത് എൻ്റെ ആഗ്രഹങ്ങളൊക്കെ വലിയ ആഗ്രഹങ്ങളാണ്. പക്ഷെ അതൊന്നും സാധിക്കാൻ പറ്റുമോ എന്നുള്ളൊരു ഒരു ഉറപ്പുമില്ലാതിരിക്കുന്ന ഒരു ജീവിത 90കളിലെ ആ ഒരു സമയം. ആ ഒരു സമയത്ത് ഹോട്ടൽ മാനേജ്മെൻറ്റോ അല്ലെങ്കിൽ അങ്ങനെയൊക്കെയുള്ള കാര്യങ്ങളെക്കുറിച്ചുള്ളൊരു അവബോധമോ അല്ലെങ്കിൽ അതൊന്നും പറഞ്ഞു തരാൻ പോലും നമുക്കറിയാത്ത ഒരു സാഹചര്യത്തിൽ ഈ ഒരു മേഖലയിലെ സാധ്യതകൾ ഞാൻ മനസ്സിലാക്കുകയും അതിനു വേണ്ടിയിട്ട് എനിക്ക് തന്നെ എൻ്റെ ബലഹീനതകൾ എന്തൊക്കെയാണ് എന്നുള്ളത് തിരിച്ചറിയാൻ പറ്റിയതാണ് എൻ്റെ ഒരു വലിയ നേട്ടമായിട്ട് എനിക്ക് തോന്നിയത്. കാരണം നമുക്ക് ഒരു വിദ്യാഭ്യാസമായിട്ടുള്ള ഒരു സപ്പോർട്ട്, ഒരു അക്കാഡമിക് സപ്പോർട്ട് ഇല്ലാതെ ഈ ഒരു മേഖലയിൽ ഒരു പരിധിക്കപ്പുറം എത്തപ്പെടാൻ പറ്റില്ല എന്നുള്ളൊരു തിരിച്ചറിവ് എനിക്ക് ആദ്യം തന്നെ കിട്ടിയിരുന്നു. അപ്പോൾ അതിനായിട്ട് കുറേയൊക്കെ സ്കില്ല് എക്സ്ട്രാ ആയിട്ട് നമ്മൾ ലേൺ ചെയ്യേണ്ടി വന്നു. അങ്ങനെ ചെയ്തതിൻ്റെ കുറേ ഗുണങ്ങളാണ് എനിക്ക് ഈ ഒരു കഴിഞ്ഞ 10 വർഷം മുമ്പ്, 10 വർഷമായിട്ട് അല്ലെങ്കിൽ ഒരു 15 വർഷത്തോളം ഞാൻ ഇംഗ്ലണ്ടിലായിരുന്നു, ആ ഒരു സമയത്ത് നേടിയെടുക്കാൻ പറ്റിയത്. ജീവിതത്തിൽ എല്ലാവർക്കും അവസരങ്ങളും ഓപ്പർച്യൂണിറ്റികളും നമ്മുടെ മുന്നിലുണ്ട്. അത് സമർത്ഥമായിട്ട് ആരൊക്കെയാണ് വിനിയോഗിക്കുക എന്നുള്ളതാണ്. അങ്ങനെയൊക്കെ കുറേയൊക്കെ കാര്യങ്ങൾ എനിക്ക് വിനിയോഗിക്കാൻ പറ്റിയതൊക്കെ കൊണ്ടാണ് ഈ ഒരു നിലയിൽ എത്താൻ പറ്റിയെന്നാണ് എൻ്റെ വിശ്വാസം. അപ്പോൾ തീർച്ചയായിട്ടും നിങ്ങൾക്ക് എല്ലാവർക്കും, എല്ലാ മനുഷ്യർക്കും ഓപ്പർച്യൂണിറ്റീസാണ് നമ്മുടെ മുന്നിലുള്ളത്. അത് തീർച്ചയായിട്ടും ഉപയോഗിക്കുക എന്നുള്ളത് എൻ്റെ ജീവിതത്തിലെ ഏറ്റവും വലിയ ടേണിംഗ് പോയിൻ്റായിട്ട് എനിക്ക് തോന്നിയത്, ഞാൻ ഈ ചെറിയ റെസ്റ്റോറൻറ്റുകളിലൊക്കെ ജോലി ചെയ്ത് ഒരു വലിയ ഷെഫായി മാറണം എന്ന, ഒരു കുക്കിൽ നിന്നൊരു ഷെഫായി മാറണമെന്ന് എനിക്ക് തോന്നിയ ഒരു നിമിഷത്തിൽ എനിക്ക് അറിയാൻ പറ്റിയത്, ഒരു ഹോട്ടൽ മാനേജ്മെൻറ്റ് ഡിഗ്രി ഇല്ല, അല്ലെങ്കിൽ നിങ്ങളൊരു 5 നക്ഷത്ര ഹോട്ടലിൽ ജോലി ചെയ്തുള്ളൊരു എക്സ്പീരിയൻസ് ഇല്ല. അപ്പോൾ അതെങ്ങനെ നേടിയെടുക്കാം, തിരിച്ചു പോയി പഠിക്കാനുള്ളൊരു സാഹചര്യം, അല്ലെങ്കിൽ ആ ഒരു സമയത്തെ സാമ്പത്തിക സ്ഥിതിയൊക്കെ വെച്ചിട്ട് വീണ്ടും ഒരു ഏജ് കഴിഞ്ഞിട്ട് ഒരു ഡിഗ്രിയൊക്കെ എടുക്കാൻ പോകുന്നതിൻ്റെ സാങ്കേതികമായ ബുദ്ധിമുട്ടുകൾ കണ്ടപ്പോൾ അടുത്തതൊരു 5 നക്ഷത്ര ഹോട്ടലിൽ എനിക്ക് എങ്ങനെ ജോലി കിട്ടും എന്നുള്ളതായിരുന്നു. അതിന് വേണ്ടിയിട്ട് കഠിനമായ പ്രയത്നങ്ങൾ, പല ഇൻ്റർവ്യൂകളിലും പങ്കെടുക്കുന്നു, പല ഇടത്തുനിന്നും റിജക്ഷൻസ്. അപ്പോൾ ഈ റിജക്ഷനൊക്കെ നമ്മുടെയൊക്കെ ജീവിതത്തിൽ എല്ലാവർക്കും ഉണ്ട്. അപ്പോൾ അതൊക്കെ വെച്ചിട്ട് നോക്കിക്കഴിഞ്ഞാൽ എനിക്കൊരു പക്ഷേ ഇങ്ങനെയൊന്നും എത്താൻ തന്നെ സാധിക്കില്ലായിരുന്നു. ആ ഒരു ഡിസപ്പോയിൻ്റ് ആയിട്ടുള്ള ആദ്യമായിട്ടൊക്കെ പോയി പല HR മാനേജേഴ്സും നമ്മുടെ ഫുഡിൻ്റെ ട്രയൽസൊക്കെ കഴിഞ്ഞിട്ട് നമ്മുടെ പേപ്പർ വർക്ക് നോക്കുമ്പോഴായിരിക്കും ഒരു ഡിഗ്രി ഇല്ലാത്തതിൻ്റെ ഒരു വിഷമം, അല്ലെങ്കിൽ നിങ്ങളത് വളരെ ക്വാളിറ്റി, എത്ര നന്നായിട്ട് ജോലി ചെയ്താൽ പോലും ആ ഒരു ഡിഗ്രി ഇല്ലാത്ത കാരണങ്ങളാൽ തഴയപ്പെട്ട സമയം. അപ്പോൾ അതുകൊണ്ട് ഒരു വാശി സ്വയം, അപ്പോൾ നമ്മുടെ ഒരു റിജക്ഷൻസ് നമ്മളൊരു വാശി പോലെ എങ്ങനെയെങ്കിലും ഇത് എന്താണ്ട് എനിക്ക് പറ്റുന്നില്ല, എനിക്ക് ബാക്കിയുള്ള കാര്യങ്ങളൊക്കെ നന്നായിട്ട് ചെയ്യാൻ പറ്റും എന്നുള്ളൊരു കോൺഫിഡൻസ് ഉണ്ടായിട്ട് ഞാൻ അതിന് വേണ്ടിയിട്ട് ശ്രമിക്കുകയും ഒരു 5 നക്ഷത്ര ഹോട്ടലിൽ ഒരു 6 മാസത്തോളം ട്രൈ ചെയ്തു, നിരന്തരമായി ട്രൈ ചെയ്ത് അവസാനം ഒരു ജോലി കിട്ടി. അത് ഒരുപാട് കോംപ്രമൈസ് ചെയ്തിട്ടാണ്. എനിക്കൊരു വളരെ ഉയർന്ന ശമ്പളവും വലിയൊരു പൊസിഷനും ഉള്ളപ്പം ഈ ഒരു ജോലി കിട്ടാൻ വേണ്ടിയിട്ട് വളരെ താഴേക്ക് ശമ്പളത്തിനും അല്ലെങ്കിൽ പൊസിഷനൊക്കെ സാക്രിഫൈസ് ചെയ്തുകൊണ്ട്, അതാണ് ജീവിതത്തിൽ ചില മൂമെൻറ്റ്സ്, നമ്മളൊരു സാക്രിഫൈസ് ചെയ്താൽ പിന്നീട് ഉണ്ടാകുന്ന ഗെയിൻ, അതൊരു കാൽക്കുലേറ്റഡ് ആയിട്ട് നമ്മളൊരു പ്ലാൻ ചെയ്ത് ചെയ്യുമ്പോൾ ഉണ്ടാകുന്നത്. പലരും അങ്ങനെ ഒരു റിസ്ക് എടുക്കാൻ തയ്യാറാവില്ല. അവരുടെ ഒരു കംഫർട്ട് സോണിൽ നിന്ന് മാറാനോ അല്ലെങ്കിൽ വേറൊരു മാറ്റം നമ്മുടെ കരിയറിൽ ഉണ്ടാക്കാനോ ആരും ശ്രമിക്കാറില്ല. ആ ഒരു മൂമെൻറ്റിൽ എനിക്കൊരു ആ 5 നക്ഷത്ര ഹോട്ടലിൽ ജോലി ലഭിക്കുകയും അതെൻ്റെ കരിയറിനെ വലിയൊരു മാറ്റമായിട്ട് ഉണ്ടാക്കുകയാണ്. ആ ഒരു മാറ്റത്തിൽ നിന്നാണ് എനിക്ക് ഇംഗ്ലണ്ടിൽ, അതൊരു ചെറുപ്പത്തിൽ എൻ്റെ ഒരു ആഗ്രഹമാണ്. മനുഷ്യരുടെ എല്ലാം ആഗ്രഹങ്ങൾ എല്ലാ മനുഷ്യർക്കുണ്ട്. ആ ആഗ്രഹങ്ങളുടെ അളവ് കൂടുന്നതനുസരിച്ച് ഒരുപക്ഷെ നമ്മൾ അതിലേക്ക് എത്തപ്പെടാൻ പറ്റും എന്നുള്ള ഒരു വിശ്വാസക്കാരനാണ്. എൻ്റെയും ചെറുപ്പത്തിൽ നിങ്ങളെപ്പോലെയൊക്കെ ഒരു ആഗ്രഹമായിരുന്നു, ഇംഗ്ലണ്ടിൽ പോകണം, അല്ലെങ്കിൽ ഓസ്ട്രേലിയയിൽ പോകണം, കാനഡയിലൊക്കെ പോകണം. അപ്പോൾ ആ ഒരു സ്വപ്നം കൊണ്ട് നടക്കുമ്പോൾ ഈ ഒരു അവസരം എൻ്റെ മുന്നിലേക്ക് എത്തുകയാണ്. ഇംഗ്ലണ്ടിലേക്ക് 2005 അവിടുത്തെ ഒരു വിശ്വവിഖ്യാതമായ 1947 ഒരു ബ്രിട്ടീഷുകാരൻ ഓപ്പൺ ചെയ്ത വീരസ്വാമി എന്ന ഒരു ലാൻഡ്മാർക്ക് റെസ്റ്റോറൻറ്റ്, അത് ഇംഗ്ലണ്ടിലെ ഏറ്റവും നല്ല ഒരു റെസ്റ്റോറൻ്റായിട്ട് അറിയപ്പെടുന്ന മിഷെലിൻ സ്റ്റാറുള്ള അവിടത്തേക്ക് ഒരു അവസരം ലഭിക്കുകയും അവിടെ ഒരു 10-12 വർഷക്കാലം ഇംഗ്ലണ്ടിലെ പല റെസ്റ്റോറൻറ്റ്സിലെ ഏറ്റവും മികച്ച ഇന്ത്യൻ റെസ്റ്റോറൻറ്റ്സിലൊക്കെ ജോലി ചെയ്യാൻ പറ്റുകയും, അതിലെ തന്നെ ഏറ്റവും വലിയ എൻ്റെ ഒരു ഭാഗ്യമായിട്ട് കാണുന്നത് BBC-യിൽ ദശലക്ഷക്കണക്കിന് ആൾക്കാർ കാണുന്ന ഒരു മാസ്റ്റർ ഷെഫ് എന്ന പ്രോഗ്രാമിൽ ഒരു മലയാളിയായി എനിക്ക് പങ്കെടുക്കാൻ ഒരു അവസരം കിട്ടുക. അവിടെ പോയി നമ്മുടെ ഒരു നാടൻ മീൻകറി ഉണ്ടാക്കാൻ പറ്റുക, അത് ജഡ്ജസ് നന്നായിട്ടൊരു കമൻറ്റ് പറയുക. എൻ്റെ ഒരു ഭയങ്കര ഞാൻ ഒരിക്കലും പ്രതീക്ഷിക്കുന്നതല്ല, ഒരു സാധാരണയായിട്ട് കൊല്ലത്തെ ഒരു ഗ്രാമത്തിൽ ജനിച്ചിട്ട് ഇംഗ്ലണ്ടിൽ പോയി ആ BBC പ്ലാറ്റ്ഫോമിൽ നിന്നിട്ടൊരു കുക്ക് ചെയ്യാൻ പറ്റുക, ഏറ്റവും വിഖ്യാതമായ ജഡ്ജസിൻ്റെ മുമ്പിൽ നിന്ന്, അതും ഒരുപാട് ലോകത്തെ ഒത്തിരി ജനങ്ങൾ കാണുന്ന ഒരു പ്രോഗ്രാമിൽ. അതിനുശേഷം കോളേജിൽ പഠിക്കാൻ പറ്റാതെ കരഞ്ഞ സമയമുണ്ട്. എനിക്കൊരു നല്ലൊരു പ്രൊഫഷണൽ കോളേജിൽ പഠിക്കാൻ പറ്റില്ല എന്നൊക്കെയുള്ള ദുഃഖം എൻ്റെ കൂടെയുള്ള കൂട്ടുകാർക്കൊക്കെ കോളേജിൽ പോകാൻ പറ്റുന്ന സമയത്ത് എനിക്ക് പോകാൻ പറ്റാതിരുന്നിട്ട് ബഹമാസ് യൂണിവേഴ്സിറ്റി എന്നുള്ളൊരു ഇൻവിറ്റേഷൻ വരുന്നു. അവിടുത്തെ കുട്ടികളെ പഠിപ്പിക്കാൻ പോവുക, ആ കുട്ടികൾക്ക് ഹയർ എഡ്യൂക്കേഷന് വേണ്ടിയിട്ടൊരു ചാരിറ്റി ഫണ്ട് റൈസ് ചെയ്തിട്ട് ഒരു ഡിന്നർ ചെയ്യാൻ പറ്റുക. അതുകൂടാണ്ട് ഓസ്ട്രേലിയയിലും യൂറോപ്പിലെ പലവിധ രാജ്യങ്ങളിലും പല റെസ്റ്റോറൻറ്റുകൾ ഓപ്പൺ ചെയ്യാനുള്ള അവസരങ്ങൾ ലഭിക്കുന്നു. ഇതൊക്കെ നോക്കുമ്പോൾ അതിനുശേഷം ലോകത്തെ പ്രസിദ്ധമായ എത്രയോ സെലിബ്രിറ്റീസ് ആയിക്കോട്ടെ, അല്ലെങ്കിൽ സ്പോർട്സ് പേഴ്സണാലിറ്റികളാവട്ടെ, പൊളിറ്റീഷ്യൻസ് ആവട്ടെ, അതിസമ്പന്നർ മുതൽ സാധാരണക്കാരായ മനുഷ്യർക്കെല്ലാം ഇഷ്ടപ്പെട്ട ഭക്ഷണമൊക്കെ ഉണ്ടാക്കി കൊടുക്കാനും അവരുമായിട്ടൊക്കെ പരിചയപ്പെടാനും അവരുമായിട്ട് സമയം ചെലവിടാനൊക്കെ കിട്ടുന്ന ഒരു മഹാഭാഗ്യം തന്നെയാണ്. ഒരു ഷെഫ് എന്ന നിലയിൽ ഒരു കരിയർ, ഒരു ഷെഫ് അല്ലെങ്കിൽ ഒരു പാചകക്കാരൻ എങ്ങനെ എന്തൊക്കെ അയാളുടെ തൊഴിലിനകത്ത് കിട്ടുന്ന മേന്മകളെല്ലാം ലഭിച്ച ഒരു മലയാളി എന്ന നിലയിലാണ്. നമുക്കെല്ലാവർക്കും അറിയാം, ഓരോ മനുഷ്യരുടെയും നേരത്തെ ഞാൻ പറഞ്ഞ പോലെ അവസരങ്ങൾ, ആ അവസരങ്ങൾ ഉപയോഗിക്കുക. ഏറ്റവും വലിയൊരു ഉദാഹരണം ഈ ഒരു മഹാമാരി, എല്ലാവർക്കും അറിയാം, കോവിഡ് എല്ലാവരുടെയും ജീവിതത്തിൽ എന്തൊക്കെ മാറ്റങ്ങൾ വരുത്തി, എത്രമാത്രം പേരെ ഇത് ദുരിതത്തിലാഴ്ത്തി. അങ്ങനെ എൻ്റെ ഒരു പേഴ്സണൽ നോക്കിയാൽ അതും എനിക്കൊരു അവസരമായിട്ടാണ് വന്നത്. ഞാൻ യാദൃശ്ചികമായിട്ട് കഴിഞ്ഞ മാർച്ചിലാണ് ഇംഗ്ലണ്ടിലേക്ക് ഒരു സപ്പർ ക്ലബ് ചെയ്യാൻ വേണ്ടിയിട്ട് ഞാൻ ജോലി ചെയ്തിരുന്ന റെസ്റ്റോറൻറ്റിലേക്ക് പോയത് 10 ദിവസത്തേക്ക്. അവിടെ പോയ ഒരു സമയത്ത് 10 ദിവസം കഴിഞ്ഞ് തിരിച്ചു വരുന്ന ദിവസമാണ് ലോക്ക്ഡൗൺ ആവുകയും അവിടെ ഒറ്റപ്പെട്ടു പോവുകയാണ്. എൻ്റെ കുടുംബം നാട്ടിലാണ്. ആ ഒരു സമയത്തുണ്ടാകുന്ന ഒരു ഡിപ്രഷൻ, നമ്മുടെ തൊഴിലിലേക്ക് ജോലിയിലേക്ക് തിരിച്ചു പോകാൻ പറ്റാത്ത ഒരു സാഹചര്യം. എല്ലാ മനുഷ്യരും കുട്ടികളും വൈഫും ഒക്കെ നാട്ടിൽ നിൽക്കുന്നു. വേറൊരു സിറ്റിയിൽ, വേറൊരു രാജ്യത്ത് തിരിച്ചു പോകാതെ, അല്ല എന്ന് പോകാൻ പറ്റും എന്ന് പോലും അറിയാതെ ഒറ്റപ്പെട്ടു പോകുന്ന ഒരു സമയത്ത് ആരായാലും ഡിപ്രസ് ആവണം. ഞാൻ ആ സമയത്ത് എന്താണ് ചെയ്യുക? ആദ്യത്തെ 1-2 ദിവസം നമുക്ക് ഭയങ്കരമായ വിഷമമൊക്കെ ഉണ്ടായി. പക്ഷേ ആ ഒരു സമയത്ത് ഞാൻ പുതിയ എന്തെങ്കിലും ചെയ്യാം, എന്തെങ്കിലും പഠിക്കാം. ഞാൻ സോഷ്യൽ മീഡിയയിലൊക്കെ ഒരുപാട് പോസ്റ്റുകളൊക്കെ സമൂഹ മാധ്യമങ്ങളൊക്കെ ചെയ്യുകയും കുറേയൊക്കെ ആൾക്കാർ എന്നെ അറിയപ്പെടുകയും ചെയ്യണം. ആ ഒരു സമയത്ത് കുറേ ഒരു റെസിപ്പി വീഡിയോ ഒക്കെ ചെയ്യുന്ന സമയത്ത് ഞാൻ എഡിറ്റിംഗ് എന്ന് പറയുന്നത് ഒരിക്കലും അറിയാത്തൊരു കാര്യമായിരുന്നു. ഞാനത് കുറച്ച് സമയം ചെലവഴിച്ചത് പഠിക്കുകയും 1-2 വീഡിയോസ് റെസിപ്പിയായിട്ട് ചെയ്യുകയും അത് അഭൂതമായ ഒരു വ്യത്യാസം. 1000-ങ്ങളും 2000-ങ്ങളൊക്കെ കണ്ടുകൊണ്ടിരുന്ന വീഡിയോ ഒറ്റയടിക്ക് 10,000-വും 20,000-വും അത് 70,000 ഫോളോവേഴ്സ് ഉണ്ടായിരുന്നത് കുറഞ്ഞ ദിവസം കൊണ്ട് അത് 1,00,000 ആവുന്നു. അടുത്ത ഒരു 10 ദിവസം കൊണ്ട് അത് 2,00,000 ആവുന്നു. അപ്പോൾ അതൊരു ഭയങ്കരമായ ഓപ്പർച്യൂണിറ്റിയാണ് എനിക്ക് ഉണ്ടാക്കി തന്നത്. ഒത്തിരി പേര് എവിടെ പോയാലും മലയാളി എന്ന നിലയിൽ ഭക്ഷണം കഴിക്കുന്നവർ, ഒരു ഫുഡി എന്ന നിലയിൽ, അല്ലെങ്കിൽ സോഷ്യൽ മീഡിയ ഉപയോഗിക്കുന്നവരൊക്കെ നമ്മളെ തിരിച്ചറിയുന്നു. ഭയങ്കരമായ സന്തോഷം. നമ്മുടെ റെസിപ്പികളൊക്കെ പലരും അത് ഉണ്ടാക്കി ഒരിക്കൽ പോലും അടുക്കളയിൽ കയറാത്ത ആൾക്കാർക്ക് അത് ഇൻസ്പിറേഷനായിട്ട് അവരത് ഉണ്ടാക്കി സന്തോഷമായിട്ട് ചെയ്യുന്നു. ഇതൊക്കെ കാണുമ്പോൾ ഉണ്ടാകുന്ന ഒരു സന്തോഷം, അത് ഈ ഒരു ലോക്ക്ഡൗൺ സമയത്ത് പലർക്കും പല നഷ്ടങ്ങളുണ്ടായപ്പോൾ ഇതൊരു ഓപ്പർച്യൂണിറ്റി എങ്ങനെ അത് എനിക്ക് വിനിയോഗിക്കാൻ പറ്റി എന്നതൊരു വലിയൊരു മെസ്സേജാണ്. തീർച്ചയായിട്ടും നിങ്ങൾക്ക് എല്ലാവർക്കും, ഭൂമിയിൽ ജനിക്കുന്ന എല്ലാ മനുഷ്യരും എന്തൊക്കെയോ സ്കിൽസ് കൊണ്ട് അല്ലെങ്കിൽ എന്തെങ്കിലും ഒരു നിമിത്തമായിട്ടായിരിക്കും നിങ്ങൾ ഈ ഭൂമിയിൽ ജനിക്കുക. അപ്പോൾ അതൊക്കെ എങ്ങനെ നമ്മളുടെ അഡ്വാൻറ്റേജ് ആയിട്ട്, അതെങ്ങനെ നമ്മൾ പോസിറ്റീവായിട്ട് ചെയ്യാൻ പറ്റും എന്നുള്ള കാര്യങ്ങളാണ്. ഇപ്പം പല കാരണങ്ങൾ കൊണ്ട് ഒരുപക്ഷെ നിങ്ങൾക്ക് നിങ്ങളുടെ ജീവിത സാഹചര്യങ്ങൾ കൊണ്ട് ഒരുപാട് പഠിച്ചിട്ടോ അല്ലെ പഠിക്കാതെയോ നിങ്ങൾ ആഗ്രഹിക്കുന്ന ഒരു ലെവലിൽ എത്താൻ പറ്റാത്ത നിരവധി ആൾക്കാരുണ്ടാവും. അതുകൊണ്ടൊന്നും നമ്മുടെ പ്രയത്നങ്ങൾ തുടരാതിരിക്കാതെ ഇരിക്കരുത്. ആ ഒരു കാര്യങ്ങൾ തുടർച്ചയായിട്ട് പ്രയത്നം, ഒരുപക്ഷെ 1 വർഷമായിരിക്കാം, അല്ലെങ്കിൽ 10 വർഷമായിരിക്കാം എടുക്കുക. ചിലരുടെ ആ ഒരു ഡിപ്പെൻസ് അവരുടെ ഏത് മേഖലയെ ബന്ധപ്പെട്ടായിരിക്കും. അങ്ങനെയൊക്കെ നോക്കിയാൽ തുടർച്ചയായിട്ട് പ്രയത്നങ്ങൾ ചെയ്താൽ കാരണം ഒരുപാട് കുട്ടികൾ ഈ ഒരു മേഖലയിലൊക്കെ, ഹോസ്പിറ്റാലിറ്റി മേഖലയിൽ വരുന്ന കുട്ടികളും അവരുടെ രക്ഷിതാക്കളൊക്കെ എന്നെ കാണുമ്പോൾ ചോദിക്കാറുണ്ട്, എങ്ങനെയാണ് ഇത്ര പെട്ടെന്ന് ഇങ്ങനൊരു ഇതൊരു സുപ്രഭാതത്തിൽ ഉണ്ടായതല്ല. 26 വർഷം ഞാൻ ഈ കരിയറിൽ എത്തിയിട്ട് മെല്ലെ മെല്ലെ തുടങ്ങി. അത് വന്നതിൻ്റെ ഒരു പരിണിത ഫലമായിട്ടാണ് ഈ ഒരു ഷെഫ് പിള്ള എന്ന, അല്ലെങ്കിൽ ഷെഫ് സുരേഷ് എന്നൊക്കെ പറഞ്ഞാൽ അറിയപ്പെടുന്ന ഒരു രീതിയിലെത്തിയത്. അപ്പോൾ എന്നോട് ചോദിക്കുന്ന, ഈ മേഖലയിലേക്ക് വരാൻ വേണ്ടി വരുന്ന കുട്ടികളൊക്കെ ചോദിക്കുന്ന കുറേ ചോദ്യങ്ങളുണ്ട്. അപ്പോൾ അതിൻ്റെയൊക്കെ അവർ കമ്പാരിഷൻ ചെയ്യുന്നത് തന്നെയാണ്. അപ്പോൾ ഞാൻ അവരോട് പറയുന്നത്, എൻ്റെ ഇന്നത്തെ ഒരു വിജയമല്ല നിങ്ങൾ കമ്പാരിഷൻ. ഞാനൊരു 10 വർഷം മുമ്പ് എന്തായിരുന്നു അതിനെയാണ് നിങ്ങൾ അല്ലെങ്കിൽ കാണുന്നത്. ഞാനിപ്പോൾ എനിക്ക് വേണമെങ്കിൽ എൻ്റെ മുന്നിലുള്ള വലിയ വലിയ ഷെഫുമാരുണ്ട്. ഇപ്പോൾ ഗോർഡൻ റാംസി അല്ലെങ്കിൽ ജെമി ഒലിവർ, അവരുടെ മില്യൺസ് ഓഫ് ഫോളോവേഴ്സും അവരൊരു പോസ്റ്റിന് ദശലക്ഷക്കണക്കിന് കാഴ്ചക്കാരൊക്കെ ഉള്ളതാണ്. അവരെ അല്ല ഞാൻ കമ്പയർ ചെയ്യേണ്ടത്. അവർ ഒരു 10 വർഷം മുമ്പ് എങ്ങനെയായിരുന്നു അങ്ങ് നോക്കിയാൽ ഒരുപക്ഷെ ഞാൻ അവരെക്കാട്ടിൽ ഒത്തിരി മുന്നിലാണെന്നുള്ളൊരു പോസിറ്റീവ്നെസ് നമുക്ക് തോന്നും. ഇപ്പോഴത്തെ കുട്ടികൾ, ഇപ്പം നമ്മൾ ഒരാളെ താരതമ്യം ചെയ്യുക, അല്ലെങ്കിൽ ഒരാളുടെ ജീവിത വിജയങ്ങൾ കണ്ട് നമുക്ക് ഒരുപാട് മുന്നേറാൻ ഉള്ള അവസരങ്ങളും ഓപ്പർച്യൂണിറ്റികളാണ് നമ്മുടെ മുന്നിലുള്ളത്. ഒരുപാട് നേട്ടങ്ങളെക്കുറിച്ചൊക്കെ എൻ്റെ കൂടെ ആൾക്കാർ ചോദിക്കാറുണ്ട്, എന്താണ് നിങ്ങൾ ഏറ്റവും സംതൃപ്തിയായ കാര്യങ്ങൾ, അല്ലെങ്കിൽ ഈ BBC-യിൽ പങ്കെടുത്തതാണോ, അല്ലെങ്കിൽ മറ്റ് രാജ്യങ്ങളിലൊക്കെ പോയതാണോ, അല്ലെങ്കിൽ വിരാട് കോഹ്ലിക്ക് ഭക്ഷണം ഉണ്ടാക്കി കൊടുത്തതാണോ എന്നൊക്കെ ചോദിക്കും. പക്ഷേ എനിക്ക് ഏറ്റവും പ്രിയപ്പെട്ടതായിട്ട് ഈ 26 വർഷത്തിനിടയിൽ ഉണ്ടായ ഒരു സംഭവം എന്ന് വെച്ചാൽ, ഈ ലോക്ക്ഡൗൺ സമയത്ത് ഞാൻ ചെയ്തൊരു റെസിപ്പി, അത് പ്രത്യേകിച്ച് ഒരു നിർവാണ എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞൊരു മലയാള ഗരിച്ചൊരു മത്സ്യവിഭവം, അത് ഒരുപാട് ജനങ്ങളിലേക്ക് എത്തപ്പെട്ടു. അതിൻ്റെ ഒരു റെസിപ്പി സാധാരണ ആളുകളുടെ ഒരു സിഗ്നേച്ചർ റെസിപ്പികളൊന്നും അതിൻ്റെ എക്സാക്റ്റ് ആയിട്ട് ഷെയർ ചെയ്യാറൊന്നുമില്ല. അത് എൻ്റെ ഒരു ആഗ്രഹത്തിൽ അത് എന്തുകൊണ്ട് അത് നല്ലൊരു എനിക്ക് വേണമെങ്കിൽ ഞാൻ ജോലി ചെയ്ത റെസ്റ്റോറൻറ്റിലെ ഒരു പ്രീമിയം പ്രൊഡക്റ്റ് ആയിട്ട് മാറ്റി വയ്ക്കാമായിരുന്നു. പക്ഷേ അതിൻ്റെ ഒരു റെസിപ്പി ഷെയർ ചെയ്തത് എന്നെ ഭയങ്കരമായിട്ട്, എന്നെ തന്നെ ഏറ്റവും ഓരോ ദിവസവും എൻ്റെ ഒരു ഷെഫ് എന്ന നിലയിൽ ഭയങ്കരമായിട്ട് സന്തോഷം ചെയ്തതാണ്. കാരണം 100-ൽ പരം ആൾക്കാർ അത് പല രാജ്യങ്ങളിലിരുന്ന് ആ ഒരു റെസിപ്പി ട്രൈ ചെയ്യുന്നു, അതിൻ്റെ പിക്ചേഴ്സ് നമുക്ക് ഷെയർ ചെയ്യുന്നു, അവരത് അവരുടെ സമൂഹ മാധ്യമങ്ങളിലൂടെ പോസ്റ്റ് ചെയ്യുന്നു. അപ്പോൾ ആ ഒരു നിർവാണ എന്ന് പറയുന്ന ഒരു ഡിഷ് ക്രിയേറ്റ് എന്ന് വെച്ചാൽ ഞാൻ ക്രിയേറ്റ് ചെയ്തതല്ല, നമ്മുടെ ഭൂമിയിൽ ഉണ്ടായിരുന്ന അല്ലെങ്കിൽ നമ്മുടെ കേരളത്തിൽ ഉണ്ടായിരുന്ന ഒരു പോർച്ചുഗീസ് അല്ലെങ്കിൽ അവിടെ സിറിയൻ കാത്തലിക്സിൻ്റെ ഒക്കെ കോട്ടയത്തേക്കുള്ള വീടുകളിലൊക്കെ ഉണ്ടായിരുന്ന ഒരു ഡിഷിനെ കുറേയൊക്കെ ഇന്നോവേറ്റീവ് ചെയ്ത് അതിനെ പ്രസൻറ്റ് ചെയ്ത് അതിനെ ഒരു എളുപ്പത്തിൽ മലയാളീകരിച്ച് എല്ലാവർക്കും ഉണ്ടാക്കാൻ പറ്റുന്ന ഒരു ക്രിയേറ്റീവ് ഡിഷായിട്ട് മാറ്റി എന്നുള്ളൊരു സംതൃപ്തി മനസ്സിലുണ്ട്. അപ്പോൾ ആ ഒരു നിർവാണ എവിടെ പോയാലും, ഇപ്പോൾ ഞാൻ പലയിടത്തും പോയാലും ഭക്ഷണമൊക്കെ ഇഷ്ടപ്പെടുന്നവരും അല്ലെങ്കിൽ സോഷ്യൽ മീഡിയയൊക്കെ കാണുന്നവർ നമ്മളെ നേരിട്ട് കാണാറുണ്ട്. അപ്പോൾ അവരെല്ലാവരും വന്ന് ആദ്യം ചോദിക്കുന്നത് ഞങ്ങൾ നിർവാണ ഉണ്ടാക്കി കഴിച്ചു, അല്ലെങ്കിൽ ഞങ്ങൾക്ക് നിർവാണയുടെ റെസിപ്പി തരും, ഞങ്ങൾ ഇന്ന റെസ്റ്റോറൻറ്റിൽ പോയി അത് കഴിച്ചു. അപ്പോൾ അത് ഒരു പാചകക്കാരൻ അല്ലെങ്കിൽ ഒരു ഭക്ഷണം ഉണ്ടാക്കി കൊടുക്കുക. ഇപ്പോൾ നമുക്ക് ഒരുപാട് സൗഭാഗ്യങ്ങളൊക്കെ ഈ ജോലിയിൽ നിന്ന് കിട്ടിയിട്ടുണ്ട്. കാരണം നേരത്തെ പറഞ്ഞു, ഒത്തിരി വലിയ വലിയ വ്യക്തിത്വങ്ങളൊക്കെ കാണുന്നതും അല്ലെങ്കിൽ സാമ്പത്തികമായിട്ട് ഫിനാൻസായിട്ട് നമ്മുടെ ഒരു റെമ്യൂണറേഷൻ ഒക്കെ നോക്കിക്കഴിഞ്ഞാലും വളരെ ഉയർന്ന നിലയിൽ ഒരു പരിധിക്കപ്പുറം ഒരു ഹോട്ടലിൻ്റെ ഒരു എക്സിക്യൂട്ടീവ് ഷെഫ് എന്നൊക്കെ ആവാൻ പറ്റിയാൽ കഴിഞ്ഞാൽ നമ്മുടെ ഒരു ജീവിത സാഹചര്യങ്ങളൊക്കെ മാറും. അപ്പോൾ അതൊക്കെ ഒരു കുറച്ച് നാൾ കഴിയുമ്പോൾ നമ്മുടെ ഒരു ഫൺ അല്ലെങ്കിൽ അതൊന്നും ആയിരിക്കത്തില്ല സാറ്റിസ്ഫാക്ഷൻ. ചെയ്യുന്ന ജോലിയിലെ ഒരു പാഷൻ വെച്ചിട്ട് നമ്മൾ ഉണ്ടാക്കി കൊടുക്കുന്ന ഒരു ആഹാരം ഉണ്ടാക്കി കൊടുത്തിട്ടൊരു വ്യക്തി അല്ലെങ്കിൽ ഒരു മനുഷ്യനെ തൃപ്തനാക്കാൻ പറ്റും എന്നുള്ളൊരു യാഥാർത്ഥ്യമാണ് എന്നെ ഓരോ ദിവസവും മുന്നോട്ട് നയിക്കുന്നത്. കാരണം ഭക്ഷണം ഉണ്ടാക്കുമ്പോൾ മാത്രമാണ് ഒരാൾ തൃപ്തി പൂർണ്ണമായിട്ടും, അല്ലെങ്കിൽ എത്ര മുന്തിയ കാറോ അല്ലെങ്കിൽ എത്ര വലിയ ഇഷ്ടപ്പെട്ട ഗാഡ്ഗറ്റൊക്കെ ആയാലും നമുക്ക് കിട്ടിയാൽ കുറഞ്ഞത് ഒരു മാസം അല്ലെങ്കിൽ കുറച്ച് ദിവസം കഴിയുമ്പോൾ നമ്മുടെ അതിൻ്റെ ഒരു ഫൺ കുറയുകയാണ്. പക്ഷേ ഭക്ഷണം എന്ന് പറയുന്നത് മനുഷ്യർക്ക് 3 നേരം വേണ്ടതാണ്. രാവിലെ കഴിച്ച ബ്രേക്ക്ഫാസ്റ്റ് വളരെ വിശദമായിട്ട് ഇഡ്ഡലിയും ദോശയും സാമ്പാറും ഒക്കെ കഴിച്ചാൽ പോലും കൃത്യം 1 മണിയാകുമ്പോൾ നിങ്ങൾക്ക് വീണ്ടും വിശക്കും. അതിനുശേഷം നല്ല ഭക്ഷണം കിട്ടിയാൽ പോലും രാത്രിയിൽ വീണ്ടും നിങ്ങൾക്ക് അത്താഴത്തിന് വിശക്കും. അപ്പോൾ 3 നേരം ആഹാരം കഴിക്കുക എന്നുള്ളത് മനുഷ്യരുടെ ഒരു പൊതു സ്വഭാവമാണ്. അപ്പോൾ അവരെയൊക്കെ ഓരോ സമയത്തും ആഹാരം കൊടുത്ത് തൃപ്തിപ്പെടുത്താൻ പറ്റുക എന്നുള്ള ഒരു ദൗത്യം കൂടെ അതുകൊണ്ടാണ് എൻ്റെ ഈ ജോലിയിൽ എനിക്ക് ഭയങ്കര സന്തോഷവും ആൾക്കാരെയൊക്കെ എങ്ങനെ കൊടുക്കാൻ പറ്റും. അപ്പോൾ ജീവിതത്തിൽ ഒരുപാട് സ്വപ്നങ്ങൾ കണ്ട് ആ സ്വപ്നത്തിന് വേണ്ടിയിട്ട് പ്രയത്നം ചെയ്ത് പലതും യാഥാർത്ഥ്യമാക്കാൻ പറ്റി. ഇനി ഒരുപാട് സ്വപ്നങ്ങൾ എൻ്റെ മനസ്സിലുണ്ട്. അപ്പോൾ അതിന് വേണ്ടിയിട്ടുള്ള പ്രയത്നങ്ങളാണ്. തീർച്ചയായിട്ടും നിങ്ങൾ ഓരോരുത്തർക്കും, നിങ്ങൾ ഓരോ മനുഷ്യർക്കും ഓരോ സ്വപ്നങ്ങളും നിങ്ങൾക്ക് തീർച്ചയായിട്ടും അതിൻ്റെ പ്രയത്നങ്ങൾ കൂടി അതിനകത്ത് കൊണ്ടുവരാൻ പറ്റിയാൽ നിരന്തരമായിട്ട് കൺസിസ്റ്റൻ്റായിട്ട് നമ്മൾ അതിന് വേണ്ടിയിട്ട് പിറകെ, നമ്മുടെ മുന്നിൽ ഒരുപാട് ഒബ്സ്റ്റക്കിൾസ് ആയിരിക്കും ഉണ്ടാവുക. നമ്മളെ പിന്തിരിപ്പിക്കാനും അല്ലെങ്കിൽ നമ്മളെ വിമർശിക്കാനും നമ്മളെ എതിരാകാനും 100,000 ആൾക്കാരുണ്ടെങ്കിലും മനസ്സിലെ ആഗ്രഹങ്ങൾക്ക് വേണ്ടിയിട്ട് സ്വയം നമ്മൾ പ്രവർത്തിച്ചാൽ നിങ്ങൾക്ക് എല്ലാവർക്കും ജീവിതത്തിൽ വിജയങ്ങൾ, ജീവിതത്തിൽ മാത്രമല്ല എൻ്റെ കരിയറിലായിക്കോട്ടെ ഏതെല്ലാം തരത്തിൽ ഒരു സംതൃപ്തമായിട്ടൊരു മനുഷ്യൻ്റെ ഈ ഭൂമിയിലെ സുന്ദരമായ ഭൂമിയിൽ ഒരു 70 അല്ലെ 80 വർഷം ജീവിച്ച് പൂർണ്ണതയിലേക്ക് എത്താൻ നിങ്ങൾക്ക് എല്ലാവർക്കും പറ്റും. അപ്പം ഈ ഒരു വേദിയിൽ നിങ്ങളുമായിട്ട് സംവദിക്കാൻ പറ്റിയത് വളരെയധികം സന്തോഷമാണ്. ഇതിനു വേണ്ടിയിട്ട് ഈ ഒരു അവസരം ഉണ്ടാക്കി തന്ന കുസാറ്റിലെ എൻ്റെ എല്ലാ സഹപ്രവർത്തകർക്കും ഞാൻ ഒരുപാട് നന്ദി പറയുന്നു. താങ്ക് യു സോ മച്ച്.
A truly inspiring talk that was. Our next speaker for the day is Deepak Vishnu, deemed as one of the most popular influencers in India. He is a motorcycle enthusiast by passion and releases very detailed and insightful content through short videos in his Instagram and YouTube about anything and everything related to racing and motorsport. Many look up to this figure as an incentive to make it big in the motorsport field. Let's welcome Deepak Vishnu, aka the Clutchless himself.
In 2015, when I graduated from mechanical engineering, BTech mechanical engineering, I was completely clueless. Like most mechanical engineer, എനിക്ക് ഒരു ഐഡിയ ഉണ്ടായിരുന്നില്ല what to do next എന്ന്. So like most mechanical engineers, I got a job in an IT company. work for near. കാരണം ജോലി ഇല്ലെങ്കിൽ you know the situation in Kerala, it is very difficult. So I got a job in IT company. എപ്പോഴും ഫ്രം എഞ്ചിനീയറിംഗ് ഞാൻ കോളേജ് ഡേയ്സ് ഇറ്റ്സെൽഫ് തന്നെ എനിക്കൊരു ഡ്രീം ഉണ്ടായിരുന്നു അബൌട്ട് motorcycles, everything related to automotive engineering. I love everything related to motorcycles, engines per se. So എല്ലാം എനിക്ക് ഇഷ്ടമായിരുന്നു. I wanted to do something specifically with an engine. പക്ഷേ എൻ്റെ ജോലി was completely away from it. Entirely, it was night shifts, day shifts, it was completely different. I didn't want to go in that direction. പക്ഷെ എനിക്ക് എഞ്ചിനീയറിംഗിനെ കുറിച്ച് യാതൊരു ഐഡിയ ഇല്ല, എന്തൊക്കെയും പഠിച്ച സാധനം എങ്ങനെ ഇംപ്ലിമെന്റ് ചെയ്യുന്നു കൂടി യാതൊരു ഐഡിയ ഇല്ല. സോ ഐ നീഡഡ് എ ചേഞ്ച്. സോ ഇൻ 2017, after working in 1 year in an IT company, I decided to learn engineering. That is when I head back to KUSAT to learn MTech thermal engineering, to get a basic idea of the subject. And that is when I met a lot of people, great minds there. And I learned a lot of things about engineering. I realized engineering is not something that you cannot find on a textbook. I learned it is not what you say on the textbook, it's something entirely different. And I struggled with MTech because I didn't have a proper base with BTech. And that is when I realized we can develop ourselves much better if we get the proper guidance. And that is what I got at KUSAT. I got a lot of mentors teaching me the basics of engineering. A lot of my classmates taught me the basics of engineering. And that is when I thought to myself, this is possible. I can do something related to automotive, related to motorcycles from this. That is when I planned I need to build a bike, because I always dreamed about scaling mountains, scaling the highest obstacles, because that was my dream. Making my dream possible, I need a motorcycle to travel, because I've always loved traveling on a motorcycle. I needed a machine that can take me anywhere, any distance, any place in India. I needed a motorcycle that could take me there. At that time, there was no such motorcycle available in the market. So I thought to myself, why not build one? In engineering in 2018, I started a prototype motorcycle build. It should be a project, it should be feasible, it should be it should be economical. That was the basic idea of the project. It should be accessible to everyone, and it should be able to take on Himalayas, take on any road, anything you throw at it, it should be able to take it. During my college day, I used to design suspension setups in collaboration with another suspension company in Thailand. I used to do a lot of research work, do a lot of developments on designing a suspension. And then I needed a motorcycle for the job, because in India, building a motorcycle from scratch requires a lot of new effort and a lot of permission to take that motorcycle across the country. And that is when I thought I modify an existing motorcycle. That is when I realized there's a motorcycle, a dual sport motorcycle. A dual sport motorcycle in India was available, called the Hero Impulse. A 2012 model, I got it from a friend. I decided to mod it. I decided to take everything apart and make it as light as possible, because if it's lightweight, I can get a little more horsepower, a little more power out of it. So I decided to strip it apart. I decided to change everything, the transmission, the engine, the suspension, everything that wasn't needed to run the motorcycle. I took it apart and I changed everything on it to make it run faster, to run it more efficient. So അങ്ങനെ ഞാൻ ഡിസൈഡ് ചെയ്തു, ത്രൂ ഔട്ട് മൈ MTech I designed a motorcycle. ആ മോട്ടോർസൈക്കിളിന്റെ കുറെ പാർട്സ് ഒക്കെ ഞാൻ കസ്റ്റം ഡിസൈൻ ചെയ്തു. I collaborated with another company in Mumbai, കുറച്ച് custom body kits, fiberglass body kits, ഒക്കെ lightweight was the theme, and everything that wasn't needed to run the motorcycle was either removed or chopped off. So ആ തീമിലാണ് ഞാൻ build ചെയ്ത് കംപ്ലീറ്റ് എല്ലാ മാനുഫാക്ചറിങ്, എവറിത്തിങ് വാസ് അറ്റ് ഹോം ഓർ അറ്റ് ദ വർക്ക്ഷോപ്പ്. എല്ലാം അങ്ങനെ ചെയ്തു. എല്ലാം വാസ് ഓൺ എ ബഡ്ജറ്റ് build ആയിരുന്നു മെയിൻ ആയിട്ട്. പക്ഷേ I wanted to change the suspension was the most expensive part of the build, and I built every suspension with the help of the Thailand company. We built the suspension according to my weight, the springs were according to my weight, and I told them about my requirements, that I needed to travel from Kerala to Kashmir, and the bike should perform well. It should be able to tackle anything that is given to it. അതായിരുന്നു എൻ്റെ aim. That was my aim, and I gave the Thailand company my objectives, and they were helpful. I gave my suggestions, and they sent me a prototype according to my need. And that was in stage 1 of the build. When I'm looking back in 2018 till 2019, till the ending of my MTech at KUSAT, I was completely on the build, researching, developing new parts for the build. It was a lot of fun. And when I completed my post graduation at CUSAT, when I went out, I didn't have a clue whether I could actually build the motorcycle, because I wasn't sure in myself whether I could build it. എനിക്ക് ഡൗട്ട് ആയിരുന്നു ചെയ്യാൻ പറ്റുമോ ഇല്ലേന്ന്. I needed a motivation, I needed a push, a strong push. നമുക്ക് എല്ലാവർക്കും വേണ്ട കാര്യം എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞാൽ, any decision which we make in life, we need somebody to give a push. And that was in my time my parents. എൻ്റെ parents ആയിരുന്നു ആ ടൈമിൽ എന്നെ ഒരു ചെറിയൊരു പുഷ് തന്ന്. because after MTech I didn't have a job, I was at home doing research. ഞാൻ books, I have lot of diaries, lot of ledgers where I note everything down. Ella small ideas, everything that I get on the ride, for the build, I wrote it down, everything about tires. I was researching on multiple forums about the road, about the route to take, about what all things that damages, everything about a motorcycle I was researching on the internet. I got a lot of information from international riders as well, and a lot of people who actually done this before. I got a lot of inputs, and actually took all those input and was compiling into a proper diary, a diary that I could take someday and build my own motorcycle. That was the complete idea behind it. And one fine day I decided to do it. That was in 2019, and that was the time there was a lot of flooding happening. Previous year there was a lot of flood, so I wanted to take my motorcycle during that time to take the harshest route, the most endurance route. I want to tackle everything on the road. So I decided to take it around August time. I decided to take the trip during the floods. So it was around March that time. So it was around March when I started the completion, the final stage of my bike. At that stage, I wasn't sure whether I will finish it on time. So I got a lot of help from my friends, my mechanics, who helped me with the build. And I decided it should be done in a month, because with the engine I wasn't sure because it would last. It was a home built engine. ആ എഞ്ചിനിൽ എനിക്ക് യാതൊരു പ്രതീക്ഷ ഉണ്ടായിരുന്നില്ല whether it would work or not. I wasn't sure whether I could take it from Kerala to Kashmir, because the engine was completely new to me. I had never worked on an engine before. We have changed everything on that engine, and എനിക്ക് ഉറപ്പുണ്ടായിരുന്നില്ല. I wasn't sure because I had to take a leap. It was ഇനി അടുത്ത മാസം ഇന്ന് ട്രിപ്പ് ഉണ്ടായിരുന്നത്, അടുത്ത മാസം where I was going on a journey, and I wasn't sure whether the engine will head up. So the motorcycle which I use for the build is the Hero Impulse, which is a dual sport motorcycle which can do 50% dirt and 50% on road. That is why it's called a dual sport. So I decided that motorcycle because the parts were very much cheap and affordable. It was easily accessible. It had shared parts, components with other Hero motorcycles. So it was very much a no-brainer for me. So I decided to take it. So we changed everything on it, and we decided to embark on our journey to the Himalayas to tackle everything on the road. And that is when I realized it wasn't as easy as this was. So talking about it now, it might seem it was easy, but it was definitely not. Designing a motorcycle from scratch requires a lot of hard work, a lot of research. A motorcycle company, when coming out with the design, coming out with the motorcycle, does a huge R&D. Lot of R&D goes into it, and the R&D which we invested was around 2 people, and we a normal motorcycle manufacturer would have around hundreds of R&D engineers working on it, but we had just 2 people on it, and we built one crazy build. It was one of the craziest build I ever done in my life. It was a project bike build. It was a cheap, affordable build, and it was economical. I could cruise at 80 to 90 all day long and still gaining about 60 plus kilometer to the liter. So what the major change we did was to the final type. The sprocket we changed. The front sprocket, we installed a 19 teeth sprocket onto the front, which was the maximum the Impulse could hold. It was like 4 teeth step up from the stock front sprocket, and we changed it to a 19 teeth sprocket. That was the maximum sprocket which we could put on. So that increased the top speed and the cruising speed of the Impulse exponentially, and also increases fuel economy. അങ്ങനെ ഞാൻ എൻ്റെ Impulse ഫൈനലി അറ്റ് ജൂൺ ആ ടൈം ആയപ്പോൾ തന്നെ ഞാൻ കംപ്ലീറ്റ്ലി ബിൽഡ് ചെയ്ത് കഴിഞ്ഞു. ഒരു പ്രോട്ടോടൈപ്പ് റൺ ചെയ്യാൻ വേണ്ടി ഞാൻ ഒന്ന് മൂന്നാർ കൊടൈക്കനാൽ ആ റൂട്ടിൽ നിന്ന് പോകാമെന്ന് വിചാരിച്ചു. കൊണ്ടുപോയപ്പോൾ ഫസ്റ്റ് ആയിട്ട് തന്നെ ആദ്യം കിട്ടിയ പണി വാൽവ്സ് അടിച്ചു പോയി. കാരണം അതിനോട് ചെറിയൊരു ഫിൽറ്റർ ഉണ്ട് ഇൻസൈഡ് ദ Impulse ഇറ്റ്സെൽഫ്. അത് പ്രോപ്പർലി ക്ലീൻഡ് അല്ലായിരുന്നു. അങ്ങനെ ക്ലീൻ ചെയ്യാത്തത് കൊണ്ട് ദ ഓയിൽ ഫ്ലോ ടു ദ ഹെഡ് വാസ് കംപ്ലീറ്റ്ലി എന്താ പറയുക, വാസ് കംപ്ലീറ്റ്ലി ബ്ലോക്ക്ഡ്. അങ്ങനെ ബ്ലോക്ക് ആയതുകൊണ്ട് മറ്റേ ഓയിൽ ഫ്ലോ കുറഞ്ഞുകൊണ്ട് ലൂബ്രിക്കേഷൻ കുറഞ്ഞുകൊണ്ട് വാൽസ് സ്റ്റാർട്ടഡ് ഹീറ്റിംഗ് അപ്പ്, ഓവർ ഹീറ്റിംഗ് ആയിട്ട് വാൽസ് ഗോട്ട് ഡാമേജ്. അപ്പോൾ തന്നെ ഇവിടെ മൂന്നാർ എത്തിയപ്പോൾ തന്നെ പണി കിട്ടി, തിരിച്ച് വണ്ടി ഓടിച്ചുകൊണ്ട് വന്നു. തിരിച്ച് അറ്റ് ദ വർക്ക്ഷോപ്പ് കംപ്ലീറ്റ്ലി വീണ്ടും റീബിൽഡ് ചെയ്തു. കുറെ പണികൾ, സസ്പെൻഷൻ ട്യൂണിംഗ് ആണ്. ഞാൻ ഇട്ട സ്പ്രിംഗ് വാസ് ടു ലൈറ്റ്, ഇറ്റ് വാസ് ബോട്ടമിങ് ഔട്ട്. ഈ സ്പ്രിംഗ് ബോട്ടമിങ് ഔട്ട് എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞു കഴിഞ്ഞാൽ ഇറ്റ് ക്യാൻ നോ ലോnger അബ്സോർബ് എനർജി. അങ്ങനെ അബ്സോർബ് എനർജി ചെയ്യാൻ പറ്റിക്കഴിഞ്ഞില്ലെങ്കിൽ ദ റിയർ വീൽ ലിഫ്റ്റ് ഓഫ് ചെയ്തോളി. ഈ റിയർ വീൽ നമ്മൾ ഈ സസ്പെൻഷൻ ഇങ്ങനത്തെ ചേഞ്ചസ് ഒക്കെ ചെയ്യുന്നതിന്റെ മേജർ റീസൺ എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞാൽ ടയറും റോഡായിട്ടുള്ള കോൺടാക്ട് നിലനിർത്താൻ വേണ്ടിയാണ്, കുറച്ചും കൂടി കൂടുതൽ ടൈം. അപ്പോൾ കുറച്ചും കൂടി കൂടുതൽ ഇൻപുട്സ് കൊടുക്കുവാണെങ്കിൽ മോർ ഇൻപുട്സ് വി ക്യാൻ കൺട്രോൾ ദ മോട്ടോർ സൈക്കിൾ. അതിനുവേണ്ടി നമ്മൾ ഈ സസ്പെൻഷൻ ഇത്ര ഇമ്പോർട്ടൻസ് കൊടുത്തത്. ഞാൻ ഫസ്റ്റ് കൊണ്ടുവന്ന സ്പ്രിംഗ് വാസ് നോട്ട് ഐഡിയൽ. അത് ചേഞ്ച് ചെയ്ത് കുറച്ചും കൂടി സ്റ്റിഫർ സ്പ്രിംഗ്, എൻ്റെ വെയിറ്റിന് കൂടി കുറച്ചും കൂടി ഡിഫറെന്റ് ആയിട്ടുള്ള സ്പ്രിംഗ് ഞാൻ യൂസ് ചെയ്തു. ഇറ്റ് ടുക്ക് 3 weeks to get the spring. എന്നിട്ട് ഞങ്ങൾ ഓഗസ്റ്റിലാണ്, ഞങ്ങൾ ജൂണിൽ സ്റ്റാർട്ട് ചെയ്യാൻ, ജൂൺ ജൂലൈ ആൻഡ് ഓഗസ്റ്റിലാണ് ഇപ്പോൾ സ്റ്റാർട്ട് ചെയ്തത്. 2 months ടൈം എടുത്തു വീണ്ടും കുറച്ചും കൂടി ഫൈനൽ R&Dക്ക് വേണ്ടി. എന്നിട്ട് ഐ സ്റ്റാർട്ടഡ് മൈ ജേർണി ഫ്രം കേരള. അപ്പോൾ സ്റ്റാർട്ട് ചെയ്ത് തുടങ്ങിയപ്പോൾ ഐ തോട്ട് ഇറ്റ് വുഡ് ബി ഡിഫിക്കൾട്ട്. എനിക്ക് കുറച്ച് ലാക്ക് ഓഫ് കോൺഫിഡൻസ്, ബിക്കോസ് നേരത്തെ പോയ റൈഡ്സിനൊക്കെ ഇഷ്യൂസ് ഉണ്ടായിട്ട്. ഐ സ്റ്റാർട്ടഡ് ഫ്രം കേരള, കൊച്ചിയിൽ നിന്ന് സ്റ്റാർട്ട് ചെയ്തു. മംഗലാപുരത്ത് നിന്ന് ഗോവ പോയി, ഗോവയിൽ നിന്ന് ഡയറക്റ്റ് പോവാം. അപ്പോഴേക്ക് കോൺഫിഡൻസ് ബിൽഡ് ചെയ്ത് നോക്കിയാൽ എന്നാൽ ആ ടൈം ഫുൾ ഫ്ലഡിങ് ആണ്. ഫുൾ ഫ്ലഡിങ്, വേഴ്സ്റ്റ് റോഡ്, ഫുൾ സ്ലഷി റോഡ്സ് ആയിരുന്നു. കംപ്ലീറ്റ്ലി നമ്മുടെ കോസ്റ്റൽ റൂട്ട് അറിയാവുന്നവർക്കറിയാം, ഭയങ്കര മോശമായിട്ടുള്ള റോഡാണ് ഫ്രം മംഗലാപുരം. കേരളത്തിൽ തന്നെ മോശമായിട്ടുള്ള റോഡ്. അത് കഴിഞ്ഞിട്ട് ഫുൾ ബാറ്റേർഡ് റോഡ്സ് ആയിരുന്നു ത്രൂ ടിൽ ഗോവ, കോലാപൂർ ഹൈവേ, അവിടെ നിന്നുള്ള കോലാപൂർ ഹൈവേ വാസ് കംപ്ലീറ്റ്ലി ഫ്ലഡഡ് ആയിരുന്നു. ആ ഒരു 4 feet വാട്ടർ എന്തോ ഉണ്ടായിരുന്നു കംപ്ലീറ്റ്ലി. അതിന്റെ മീഡിയന്റെ മുകളിൽ കൂടിയൊക്കെ ഓടിച്ചു പോയ ടെസ്റ്റിംഗ് ദ മോട്ടോർ സൈക്കിൾ ടു ദ ലിമിറ്റ്സ് ആയിരുന്നു. അവിടെ ഓടിച്ചു പോയി, ജയ്പൂരിൽ നിന്ന് ഡയറക്റ്റ് ഡൽഹി പോയി, ഡൽഹിയിൽ നിന്ന് മണാലി പോയി. വൺ ഓഫ് ദി ടഫസ്റ്റ് റോഡ്സ് ആയിരുന്നു. ഫ്രം മണാലി ടു ലേ പോയി. ലേ ലഡാക്ക് വാസ് കംപ്ലീറ്റ്ലി ഡൺ ഈസിലി. ഞാൻ എപ്പോഴും ഓർമ്മയുണ്ട്, ഞാൻ കരുതുങ്ങള ദ വേൾഡ്സ് ഹയസ്റ്റ് മോട്ടറബിൾ റോഡ് ഇൻ ദ വേൾഡ് ആണ്. അവിടെ ചെന്ന് ഞാൻ തിരിച്ച് ഇറങ്ങുമ്പോൾ ഐ തോട്ട് ദർ വുഡ് ബി സംതിങ് എൽസ്. കുറച്ചും കൂടി ടഫർ ആയിട്ടുള്ള ചാലഞ്ച് വുഡ് ബി വെയിറ്റിംഗ്. നമ്മൾ ഓരോ ചാലഞ്ച് നമ്മൾ ക്രോസ് ചെയ്ത് പോയിക്കൊണ്ടിരിക്കുക. അപ്പോൾ ഐ തോട്ട് ദർ വുഡ് ബി സംതിങ് മോർ ചാലഞ്ചിങ് അറ്റ് ദ എൻഡ് ഓഫ് ദ റോഡ്. പക്ഷെ ഐ വാസ് ഡിസെൻഡിങ് ഫ്രം കർദുംഗ്ല, ദ വേൾഡ്സ് മോസ്റ്റ് ഹയസ്റ്റ് മോട്ടറബിൾ റോഡ്. ഞാൻ എൻ്റെ താഴോട്ട് ഇറങ്ങി പോകുമ്പോൾ ഐ ആസ്ക്ഡ് മൈ കോ പാസഞ്ചർ, മൈ കോ റൈഡർ, ഞാൻ ചോദിച്ചു ഇസ് ഇറ്റ് ഇറ്റ്? അപ്പോൾ പറഞ്ഞു ദിസ് ഇസ് ഇറ്റ് എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞു. അപ്പോൾ ഐ വാസ് ഡിസപ്പോയിന്റഡ് ബിക്കോസ് വി ബിൽഡ് ആൻ ഓവർ കിൽ മോട്ടോർ സൈക്കിൾ ഫോർ ദ ജോബ്. I was waiting for something more challenging and I didn't get it. And I was disappointed. I was like, oh, and I made a post on Instagram that Kardungla is overrated. There's nothing interesting here because we built an overkill motorcycle for the job. Himalayas, we took it very easy. I could easily ride it very easily. There wasn't nothing much challenging to it. So, നമ്മൾ ഈ കഥകളൊക്കെ കേൾക്കാറുണ്ട് from riders. It was the most toughest ride of their lives. And I was expecting something similar. And I did it with ease. That was the expectation. That I had a huge expectation and that was completely destroyed. And I was like, I didn't need to research this much. I didn't need to do so much to do this. So I was disappointed in myself and I decided to ride back. I ride back from the Himalayas to Kochi just to make sure we built a great engine. And that engine was doing perfectly well. It ran beautifully well all day. I even remember riding 24 hours. Around 22 to 24 hours of per day I rode. That was, I took a couple of hours of break, but then I still rode the bike continuously throughout the day. And I don't know if I could test the bike anymore. So that gave me a lot of confidence in my motorcycle. That actually gave me a lot of confidence in myself and my bike building capabilities. I realized that I could do it. That was my first understanding that I can build a motorcycle. I can build a reliable motorcycle, a reliable performance oriented motorcycle. I could do it. So I came back to Kochi and that was around September time. I decided, at that time I got a lot of requests from a lot of people to build motorcycle for them because they wanted a similar motorcycle that could do it. And on a budget build, they wanted something to do it. So I thought, why not build motorcycles for these guys? So that was my plan. So when I started, I thought I could, start a workshop, a bike building station here in Kochi. And that is when I heard of a new virus. In November that time, a COVID-19 virus strain that was emerging all around the world in China. So I thought it wouldn't affect India. But 2 months later, we had a major lockdown here in India. And that was when all the plans went haywire. I really thought I would start a workshop, a tuning station here in India where I can implement ideas, build people their dream motorcycles. But that completely changed. And that is when I decided, I got a lot of time to think during the lockdown. I started making small information videos on social media, and that went viral. Most of my videos got very good feedback, got lot of reach, and a lot of companies starting messaging me, contacting me about the things which I do. Started collaborating with a lot of companies, and I really enjoyed making video content. So that gave me a lot more confidence. That gave me a lot more audience base that I could sell my products, deliver my products to. So then after lockdown in September 20, when the lockdowns eased up, I thought to myself, why not start a workshop or a tuning station here in Kochi? Just not a tuning station, it had to be something special. So I really loved the Japanese culture of an underground tuning shop. So I wanted to bring that same culture to India, to Kerala especially, to Kochi. I wanted people to experience the underground culture that is present all around the world, but not in India. So I wanted to bring a little piece of that culture to India. So that is what you see here. That is underground tuning. It is virtually, it is like physically underground. So what I wanted, I wanted to give people an experience, build bikes of their dream. It shouldn't be expensive. It should do the job. Whatever it is given, it should be able to do it. That is my dream. That was my goal, and I have achieved it. So it wasn't easy. It took a lot of time. It took a lot of work. It took a lot of planning. But in the end, I finally managed to do it because I planned right, because I took very hard decisions, because I made the jump, because there was a lot of people who gave me that push. I previously told that every decision that we have to make, we need to have a little push from that some close person to make that jump. And I had that close person in my life who gave me that push. So I was able to make a lot of decision, lot of hard decision was able to make. And that is what you see here. What you see right now is the fruit of that decision, fruit of all those decisions. And I have to say, I'm loving it, because we've been able to build race bikes, lot of race bikes. We raced them on the track, we raced them on the road, road racing, not on the road, for road racing. And for dirt, we are even actually building a dirt project. It's currently behind there, you can't see it, but when it's done, it will be up live. So this was my dream. Underground tuning start ചെയ്തപ്പോൾ എനിക്കറിയില്ല എന്തായി തുടങ്ങണമെന്ന് അറിയില്ലായിരുന്നു. പക്ഷേ this was my dream. ഇത് എനിക്ക് ചെയ്തെടുക്കാൻ കുറച്ച് ഡിഫിക്കൽട്ട് ആയിരുന്നു, കുറച്ച് പ്രോസസ് ഒക്കെ ഇൻവോൾവ് ആയിരുന്നു. പക്ഷേ in the end it kind of formed into the way I wanted. So ഇത് സ്റ്റാർട്ട് ചെയ്തപ്പോൾ എനിക്ക് അറിയില്ലായിരുന്നു എന്ത് രീതി തുടങ്ങണം, how it should start, എന്താണ് പ്രോപ്പർ വേ എന്ന് എനിക്ക് അറിയില്ലായിരുന്നു. പക്ഷേ in the end this is what I wanted. Building bikes, racing them, traveling across India. This is what I wanted. ഇതായിരുന്നു എനിക്ക് ചെയ്യേണ്ട ഫ്രം ദ സ്റ്റാർട്ട്. പക്ഷെ എനിക്ക് സ്റ്റാർട്ടിൽ അറിയില്ലായിരുന്നു ഇതായിരിക്കും വേണ്ടെന്ന്. പക്ഷേ ഓൺ ദ ഗോ ഇറ്റ് ഹാപ്പൻഡ്. ഇതായിരുന്നു എനിക്ക് ചെയ്യേണ്ടത്. അതെനിക്ക് ഫസ്റ്റ് എനിക്ക് ഐഡിയ ഉണ്ടല്ല, ലൈക്ക് മോസ്റ്റ് പീപ്പിൾ വാച്ചിങ് എന്താ ചെയ്യുന്നത്, എന്താ ഇതിനെക്കുറിച്ച് ഐഡിയ യാതൊരു ഒരാൾക്കും ഉണ്ടായില്ല, വാട്ട് ദേ ആർ ഡൂയിങ് വിത്ത് ദെയർ ലൈഫ്. പക്ഷേ ഐ ഡിഡ് വാട്ട് ഐ റിയലി വാണ്ടഡ് ടു ഡു. എനിക്ക് ഇഷ്ടമുള്ള കാര്യമാണ് ഞാൻ ചെയ്തത്. വാട്ട് മെയ്ഡ് മീ ഹാപ്പി, അതാണ് മേജർ തിങ് ദാറ്റ് യു ഷുഡ് ഡു. എനിക്ക് പറയാനുള്ളതാണെങ്കിൽ ദാറ്റ് ഈസ് വാട്ട് യു ഷുഡ് ഡു. ഇപ്പൊ എനിക്ക് ഇഷ്ടമുള്ള കാര്യമായിരുന്നു, ഒരാളും ഫോഴ്സ് ചെയ്യാത്ത കാര്യമായിരുന്നു. എനിക്ക് കണ്ണടച്ച് കണ്ണ് തുറന്നാൽ വാട്ട് ഐ വാണ്ടഡ് ടു ബി ഡൂയിങ് ഇസ് വർക്കിംഗ് ഓൺ ബൈക്സ് ഓർ റൈഡിങ് ബൈക്സ് ഓർ ട്രാവലിംഗ്. ഈ 3 കാര്യമാണ് എനിക്ക് ചെയ്യേണ്ടത്. ആൻഡ് നൗ ഐ ഗെറ്റ് പെയ്ഡ് ടു ഡു ഇറ്റ്. ദാറ്റ് വാസ് മൈ ഡ്രീം. അതായിരുന്നു എൻ്റെ സ്വപ്നം. ദാറ്റ് വാസ് മൈ ഡ്രീം. ദാറ്റ് വാസ് വാട്ട് ഐ വാസ് വർക്കിംഗ് ഫോർ, ആൻഡ് ഫൈനലി ഇറ്റ്സ് പോസിബിൾ. So last few months back, we built our race bike, one of the fastest bikes in India. It was one of a kind, totally outspec motorcycle. But we crashed. I crashed it. I crashed it on track. Completely fine. The bike is total, but we'll be getting back to it. Currently, we rebuild it. We can easily fix it. The first time was difficult. The second time, we learned from our mistakes. That's the major thing. We learned from our mistake. We learned how to get the bike fast. Now we are planning to get it more faster. So that is it for it. I think that is what I want to tell you guys. If you have a dream, make it happen. Your dreams are only limited by your imagination. You can definitely achieve it. Everything is possible. You just have to work for it. You just have to make your own decision. You have to take your own stand. So that is it. That is what I want to tell you guys. So thank you. Stay safe. Ride hard.
Now we have a special talent who has a story to share with us on how COVID caught his life and how he adapted to the new normal. Let us invite Master Aditya to the stage.
Hi, I am Aditya Krishna. I am 9 years old. COVID and lockdown changed many things for me. No, not only me. Every student out there. With school shut down, we cannot meet our friends or play with them anymore. There are no more lunch breaks, trips or events. So what did I do? Here is my story. In March 2020, due to spread of COVID, India forced into lockdown. So every school has been closed. I should stay at home. So what is next? I always say, train your mind and heart to see good in everything. There is always something to be thankful for. When my parents go out, they wear masks, and when they come back to home, they wash their hands. And some people practice to take better care of their health, and some people make masks and sell it. Because of that, they can get some money. I can see the nature, it's healing itself, and the air is so clean. And we can see Himalaya from Jalandhar. For the first time in ages, I can see Ganga river is clean to take bath, and the cities are getting peaceful. Even the animals start visiting the mall. To get away from the pandemic, me and my brother shifted to our grandparents' village. The environment was very clean and the sunlight was touching every room of the house, and it was very airy. I got a chance to live with my grandparents, also the other families, and the people who were living there were lovely and connected to each other. During our life in city, we never knew that we will have so much of fun together. My grandmother cooks healthy food, but in city I used to eat junk food. So I shifted to eat healthy food. I can see all the work which my father and mother do. My mother do not want us to be sick, so she learned hair cutting and cut hair for us. And my father started cooking and he does yummy jamun. Though I can't go to school, I attend online classes. Online classes like coding, drawing and other activities. It's nice, but I can't hide my homeworks anymore. It has been more than a year since pandemic and many things have changed. When I wake up early in the morning, I clean up my room and I learn many indoor games and play it with my brother. And when I sit for my breakfast, I wait for my father's yummy egg dosa. Because of the online classes, my parents can know my strength and weakness. They improve my education. And after the pandemic, I started eating healthy food. So I got my little muscles. There are 3 things I learned over this time. First, my parents are doing many things without complaining. I'm inspired by them and start helping them. Second, we should protect our environment, and during the pandemic, the nature is getting repair itself from the damage which we done. It's our responsibility to take care of this nature. Lastly, the pandemic found the human spirit. It has given me the confidence. If any bad things happen, we can always unite and overcome the challenges.
And that brings us to the end of the event. We hope that everyone will disperse this virtual gathering with a novel and sustainable idea on how to lead this world into a more brighter future. Thank you all for joining us today. Stay safe, stay well, and we hope to see you very soon.